it would seem. Just wait a couple moments to see if anyone else hops in. Make sure you say hello in the chat so I can see you. Yeah, I'm excited to get into chapter 4 of Shatterpoint. Should be pretty good. I've just got done watching Darth Paus's new video about this, basically what Disney Star Wars is going to be like in 2025. It's not looking promising. Not much to look forward to anyway. Darth Pause says, yes, KOTOR TV show rumoured. Well, I wouldn't put it past them. Like you said in your video, they just like to take from the EU, don't they? So everything else they've tried hasn't worked. Scran wrote my video. Yeah, that's true. I am the ghostwriter, the honorary ghostwriter. It was a good video though, Pause. Well done. I hope they make a KOTOR show, give me more content. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Let's see. Matthew says Mace Windu. Oh wait, Mace Windex was the joke back in the day, blowing out a window due to unlimited power. I forgot about Unbreakable. Yeah, it's pretty funny that Samuel L. Jackson played Mace Windu and Mr. Glass, so the memes sound. William says, I just caught pause 2 and I am here to say hello. Cheers, William. It's always good to see you in here, buddy. I'm happy to have you. So yeah, we'll just get into it. Obviously, I like to take some notes during the week for something to talk about before we read the novel. Mace broke the glass, that's why they call him Mr. Glass. You're a fake fan, Pause, because the glass shattered beforehand. Although, was it Mace Windu's lightsaber or Sidious's lightsaber that broke it? Who knows? Logan says, something that would make OG Legend fans like myself feel at home is a Mr. Glass movie. Oh well, Logan, maybe someday if the channel gets big enough. Oh, no way, Ezra's in here. He says, force choke that like button. Scran comes into my streams and says this all the time. I had to repay the favour. Hello, buddy. Good to see you, Ezra. I enjoyed your stream earlier, what I caught of it. A Scran fan film. Aye, Mr. Glass, Mr. Glass, the movie. That's where we're headed. But aye, good to see you, Ezra. Yeah, I stole that phrase from the Star Wars Marvel purist. That's what he likes to say. Anywho's, we'll get into the topics before we get into chapter 4 of Mr. Glass, the best EU novel ever written. Let's see. So we can skip that. No one cares about how my day went. I had to get a new battery for my car. My car wouldn't work this morning. Love it. Good to be here. Cheers, Ezra. Nice to have you, man. Scran thoughts on Fate of the Jedi Book 10. I'm pretty sure that book doesn't exist, Darth Pause. You can ask Star Wars Theory and Stupendous Wave what they think of it. Isn't that the one where Darth Bane did the thought bomb? Okay. Oh yeah, just to get started, I wanted to promote the Gatekeepers Alliance channel. If you're not subscribed to that yet, you should head over there. It's basically a super group. They're like the traveling Warburys of the Star Wars channel community. You've got United Spacers Alliance, Knights of Melvin, Star Wars Marvel Purist, OG Star Wars, my personal favourite channel. Not to talk crap on the rest of yous, but Stupendous Wave said Boba Fett trained Jaina in Fate of the Jedi. I'm pretty sure it's the series after that. Is it Legacy of the Force that happened? The Gatekeepers Alliance is too toxic. Oh well, Darth Pause, I'm sure you'll be part of that someday. You're the biggest troll I know on the platform. Before, is that right? Logan's Legacy. I've maybe got those mixed up then. I hate searching for EU and Legend pops up. Yeah, it's a bit lame, isn't it? Yeah, Darth Pause is calling me out. It took place before. Go ahead and unsub. It's all good. I've got just over 300 now. Pause. See you later. And the last person I meant to mention was Mr. Grizzy. Obviously, his channel's amazing as well. So you're actually going to want to be on Grizzy's channel. I'm told January 10th they're going to be doing the very first episode of Star Triggered. So that's going to be a good laugh, I think. If it's anything like what these people are doing on their own channels, it'll be a lot of fun. Darth Pause, it's time to bounce. Time to bounce. Oh, and speaking of Grizzy's channel, the Star Wars Marvel Purist was actually on there the other night. I think it was for the Shill Watch Along stream, and it was pretty funny. I still need to check out the rest of that stream, but it was funny. Speaking of, he's actually just reached over 1,000 subs on his channel, which is really well deserved, to be honest. I think Purist's channel's what was the word I used? It's really valuable, I think. Oh, Narrow Dark, good to see you, pal. Pause is talking about Jake Lloyd. Oh yeah, I was going to bring that up later. Darth Pause, Star Wars Theory. He did the video about the new article that came out about Jake Lloyd, and obviously it's awesome. It's awesome that Jake Lloyd's doing better with his mental health. But like we were talking about this like months ago. Fans never bullied him to the point that he quit acting and stuff like that. His mum even said it was due to mental health. It was genetics. You know, he's got schizophrenia that he inherited, which is a total shame. But Star Wars Theory's basically saying that Star Wars Luke UK, nice to see you, man. Thanks for popping in. He was basically saying that it would be great if Jake Lloyd would start doing conventions and stuff like that, and he'd finally get to see like how much people love him and stuff like that. Jake Lloyd was doing conventions for years, for absolute years. He's done it more than Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor combined, probably. So he's very aware that he's appreciated by fans. It's the media that he doesn't like. He doesn't like people shoving cameras in his face and asking him ridiculous questions, you know what I mean? And I obviously did a video about that, which I think is pretty good. Jake Lloyd was the only one to be bullied into schizophrenia. Nice one, Pause. That's bad. So you've made me lose my point because that was coming up later. You know how thorough I am. I've got my bullet points. Oh yeah, and we're talking about good Star Wars channels. I was actually on Decrepit's channel he invited me on for his first ever live stream. And yes, Shill's pushed the propaganda, it's true. So Decrepit invited me onto his channel for his very first live stream. He hit 50 subscribers, which we all know is a pretty big milestone when you're just starting your channel. But I was on there with him. We had Narrow Dark and Captain Keeley, they're both awesome. They're always supporting my videos on my channel. So, and basically during that stream, he went from like 50 odd subscriber. He went from 53 to 63, which was awesome. So it was a pretty big privilege to get to be on there for that, to help him out. And so yeah, just make sure you subscribe to all those channels I mentioned, and obviously if I remember, I'll put them in the description at the end. So anyway, so I mentioned I reached 300 subs on the channel. I made a video about that yesterday. It was a bit less cohesive than my usual stuff, but I just kind of wanted to say my piece, and I just want to extend to everyone here a personal thanks for, you know, supporting the live streams and coming in and chatting with me. It's always a lot of fun. And oh, and if you're in here and you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate it. Obviously, my channel focuses on OG Star Wars. That's everything that was made under George Lucas. You know, if you want to learn about Disney Wars, you can go to channels like Star Wars Theory or Echo Base Network. I'm sure they'll happily oblige. And yeah, I've had a pretty good laugh the last couple of days going into Darth Pawsey's comment section, because he's obviously done a few videos about theory, but his comment sections are hilarious. There's people that will come in and they just defend anything the guy says, any ridiculous claim he says. It's actually pretty alarming, to be honest. What's Matthew saying? He says, I remember the prequel hate started early. I had recommended Phantom Menace to a few people who loved it until they were told they had to hate it by peers or the media. Yeah, that's what I've come to understand. The media, even Ewan McGregor has said this a handful of times, the media are the ones that pushed that stuff. Theory cultists, yeah, you could call them that. Oh, Vex is here. Nice to see you, man. Always a pleasure. That's right, Vex. You started the meme, and Mr. Glass shall reign supreme. Unintentional rhyme. Oh, New York, Florida, man. Good to see you, buddy. Awesome. We've got some good folks in the chat, so we'll continue. Oh yeah, the comment I saw the most. It's basically people saying that Pause and anyone criticizing theory are just jealous. And they actually were using the difference in channel size to make that argument. So, you know, first of all, large sub count doesn't equal knowledge or understanding. And second of all, everything Darth Pause said in that video was true. And he doesn't even have to expose theory, because he does it to himself every time he streams. Darth Pause trolling in the chat. Predictable. Oh, you were talking about what I'm talking about. Aye, they're just calling you jealous. And it's laughable, especially because you use evidence and sources from theory's own mouth, you know what I mean? But anyway, he doesn't... Yeah, I thought I was going mental, because someone in your comments was basically saying that I'm like, they said I'm a jealous crybaby, and they were like, I looked at your channel and all your early videos are just like one's theory was making. And I thought I was going mental, because I don't remember ever covering Disney Vader comics or making theories about Snoke and Rey in the Disney trilogy. Star Wars Marvel purist, he's here. Mr. Glass, that's right. I don't know if you just arrived, dude, but I was promoting your channel earlier, and obviously the Star Triggered stream that's happening. So theory makes Disney videos, it's true. But yeah, you got to say it like Knights of Melvin. Disney! Scran stole Theory's videos. Oh, apparently, aye. Just jealous, you've just got to copy the big channel. Thanks, I was editing Star Wars Normie episode 1. Nice one. Looking forward to that. So where did we get to? Yeah, and talking about that, like, Theory, he doesn't do his due diligence, and he doesn't do his research. So if there's something, yeah, so there's no way that he's ever made a video like the ones like I made. He's never talked about the entire history of an EU novel, because he doesn't even consider them actual Star Wars, you know what I mean? And we know what he's been saying about that. But yeah, I really need to upgrade my equipment, so when I'm streaming I can start showing sources, because it'd be really good to be able to back up what I'm saying. But if you need the evidence, go to Darth Pause's channel, he's got it all on there. And obviously a Purist and a handful of others. Theory only makes videos about Darth Caedus and the Vong. He calls them, like, is it Caedus or something like that? You have integrity and passion, he doesn't. Cheers, Purist. Good to see you chatting to each other in the chat, that's awesome. That's what it's all about. That's how we're going to keep Star Wars alive, you know? Yeah, I'll upgrade my... I'm getting a bit more traction on the channel. I'll really need to step up my game and do a bit better at this streaming thing. I didn't watch all of Theory's recent stream, but to be honest, it's getting a bit exhausting trying to keep up with all the silly stuff he's been saying. And the other people on his panel, for that matter. Pause says Star Wars is dead besides the Vader comics. Those are good. Or Rogue One. Oh, dudes, I'll show you this. Right, I didn't buy this, right? I explained to my mum a good few months ago. I says, if you want to keep buying me Star Wars stuff that you find, just make sure it doesn't say Disney on it, or it was released before 2012, right? And she's like, cool, no problem. And then she's done it a handful of times, right? She bought me this. She bought me a Rogue One book for £1.50, right? And I'm like, Mum, I can't show this on my stream. They're going to call me a shill. Darth Pause is going to have a field day. But she was like, I know you don't want it, but you could at least like slag it or something like that. And I was like, you're right. You can be my source for Disney products, because I'm not going to buy them. Aye, there's Darth Pause right now. Rogue One shill. Oof, that's embarrassing. Aye. Disney shill. Aye, so paperweight. Disney shill. What was that? Narrow Dark says thoughtful mum either way. Aye, it's true, I've got a good mum. Ah, Purist unsubbed. Oh, that's a shame. Purist's a big shot now. He's got over 1,000 subs, so your mum knows the game all too well. Aye, Ezra, that's right. She's well informed. She knows what I like. Looks good to put drinks on. Aye. Wait, where is it? Aye, it can be a... I was going to show you this anyway. My mug. Pretty cool, right? I had to like glue the handle back on because it snapped off. So he can sit on top of that. There you go, coaster. Nowhere near a big shot. I was just goofing, man. But it's honestly, it's awesome that you've reached that 1,000. Purist can officially be blocked by Theory now. Big shot status. Well, maybe if he's got enough subs, Theory will actually address him and maybe even let him on the channel, you know? Din Djarin mug, good one, pause. I'll ignore that. I mean, I know a lot of people like Rogue One. I've obviously got my thoughts on it. You too, brother, hope you a good man. Oh, that's probably not addressed to me. Oh well. Let's see. How many Brits have we got in the chat, just so I know? I know Luke UK and Ezra are from England at least. It's either me or Purist that will be brought on. Rogue One is terrible. Yeah, pause. I think that's really... I think that... What's the word for it? I think that could happen. Rogue One has good production design. I mean, if you want to say it's the best thing that they've made, their best movie, sure. But it obviously has its contradictions with the EU, and there's even a point where they go to hyperspace from atmosphere, which breaks lore from the original movies, you know? Like, why was Grievous just hanging about above Coruscant? Why didn't he just, like, light speed out of there? He had to fight his way out. Let's see. Keep losing my place because you're good conversationalists. Yeah, so if you want that proof, it's in Pozzy's videos anyway. To do with Star Wars Theory. And... yes, I was gonna... Nah, I'll leave that part out. It's just... I'll be punching down if I keep saying that. Anyway, I've been playing a bit of The Old Republic. For the first time. It's actually really fun. It's kind of similar gameplay to the DC Universe Online that I used to play. It's not really the kind of game that I'm really that into. Haven't even had Yavin Base gang up on me yet. I will, purist, just tell him to delete Disney Plus, and then he'll get all his pals on your stream. And then you can get Paws on to fight them off. That was embarrassing. Like, I can't believe that actually happened on Paws's channel. For anyone that doesn't know, Paws had a channel that he called out, come onto his stream to talk about it, and then when he sent the link out, the dude sent the link to 2 of his pals, and all 3 of them hopped on. And Paws held his own against them. They're three grown dudes against like a teenager. But Paws knows his stuff. Yep, one by one they left, and then you backed him into. You weren't even rude to him, really. You just asked him the questions, and he couldn't answer them. He wasn't even used to being asked those questions. It was insane. He didn't know how to answer them without being hypocritical, you know? The DA loves Courtship of Princess Leia. Well, the DA doesn't know what he's missing, because that's arguably the best EU novel. Paws beat him up. Yep, they couldn't even defeat a 12-year-old. Pathetic. I don't know what age Paws is, but he can definitely hold his own. Let's see. Oh, I was talking about the games. So basically, I've been playing that, and it's really just to get back into the swing of things because, right, basically, Darth Paws bullied me to the point that my wife had to buy me KOTOR and KOTOR 2. A 25-year-old boy like Jacob, oh man. Yeah, Paws kept punching down, because he's a 3.6 thousand subscriber channel, I've only got 300. Paws was punching down, calling me a shill, he was calling me a fake fan because I'd never played KOTOR, so my wife didn't want to be married to a complete loser, so she got it for me. So yeah, I'll mainly be playing it just so he'll stop exposing me. Scran hasn't played KOTOR in 19 days. Are you still keeping count? Well, Paws, I'll let everyone know you've never played the Phantom Menace game for PS1. And Ezra's Junkyard will get on your case for that, because that's the reason I started following his channel. That's the best Star Wars game ever created. He can show you all the cheats and stuff as well. Ezra does good videos like that, and he does Jedi Power Battles. Paws has probably never heard of them because he probably wasn't born. Paws was just a poor wee fetus when all the real Star Wars was getting made, you know? The DA is a real fan. Sure. Yeah, Power Battles is good. Paws was a fetus when Filoni made TCW. I think Filoni's brain was a fetus when he was making that. So childish. Right. But yeah, I think definitely playing KOTOR and KOTOR 2 will really benefit me for when I'm doing like videos in the future to do with that era. While we're talking games, I was alive during TCW. Sure, Paws, whatever you say. Yeah, while we're on the subject, what's everyone's favourite Star Wars game? I'd say mine, the one that has the most nostalgia would be Rogue Squadron for the Nintendo 64. Like, I can still hear the blaster fire from the X-Wings in that. Star Wars Outlaws, is that your favourite, aye? I know that's Darth Paws's favourite. Oh, I missed who that was that said, was it Luke UK said Jedi Academy? Paws, your favourite's Jedi Outlaws? That's surprising. You don't have to say it more than once. Tony's favourite is Jedi Outcast. Nice, and those games are part of the one I got, Force Unleashed as well. Paws grew up with Shadows of the Empire in '96. So much nostalgia. Aye, sure, Paws. You've probably still You probably still know more about it than Star Wars Theory anyway. William likes pod racing, Shadows of the Empire, best ever. Matthew says Battlefront 2 or KOTOR. Ezra's Junkyard, Phantom Menace, PS1. Also, the movie Duels mode was so much fun on Jedi Academy. Oh, I didn't know you'd played them. You'd played that, Ezra. That's cool. You'll need to do one like a game playthrough on your channel at some point. Darth Pause says, I've read Shadows of the Empire. Sure, Pause, sure. I've got a copy here if you've no read it, Pause. It's actually tiny. It's a tiny version just for you, wee man. I bet Pause is like 6'2" in real life. So when I move to the States, he's gonna like, you know, punch down literally. Yeah, I'd say either Rogue Squadron just for nostalgia. My favourite probably is Battlefront 2 for the PS2. You've got the picture book version, aye? I keep missing these other chats because Pause is ridiculous. Oh, speaking of picture books, on the streams we always like to recommend a EU book for Star Wars Theory, so here's the Phantom Menace scrapbook. It's got loads of nice pictures in there for him, so he doesn't get bored. Oh, there's Obi-Wan. Good stuff. Information about Coruscant. Star Wars Theory, guess where the name Coruscant comes from? That would be Heir of the Empire, the expanded universe. Just so you know. Anyways, I brought that up a bit early because I've actually started reading in my spare time The Cloak of Deception. I know Tim from the United Spacers Alliance loves this book, and Darth Pause likes it too. And Purist is a big James Luceno fan. I'm loving this so far. It's a great book. It's and for Ezra, I know Ezra's been reading Darth Plagueis. It's the same author, so you know it's good. But it's like, what was it I said about it so far? Yeah, so Luceno's honestly really managed to capture the essence of the Phantom Menace. I feel like when you're reading this, it feels like it could be like the start of the Phantom Menace, if you understand what I mean. And it's really cool to read him describe things like the Trade Federation ship. He goes into really good description of that, and like Nemoidians and how their face is structured, and it's really cool. It's like if you've never watched Star Wars, you can see it through this novel. Scran is reading 2 books at once. Pause. I don't understand the problem with that, because if I only stuck to one book, I'd only be getting 1 chapter of Shatterpoint every week, and that's not how I want to live. He does have 2 eyes. Aye. Basically, Shatterpoint's reserved for the streams, but you know, I actually like this stuff, so I'm going to be reading it in my spare time. And I'm not going to be getting all the abridged audiobook versions either. But for anyone listening who aren't big on reading, like, joke aside, you do get audiobook versions of these books, which are pretty good. The Phantom Menace era is amazing. It really is. Along with the rise of the Empire. It's all good, man. It's all good. I like all the Star Wars. But yeah, of what I've read of the EU, like as much as I love the post Return of the Jedi era, like I've explained before, I find those books a little bit dated, not in a bad way, but just the writing style. But then people like Luceno in the kind of prequel era, I just love. I think it's a lot more compact and kind of like descriptive and polished, I guess would be a better word. The deleted Mr. Glass scene from The Phantom Menace was crazy. Oh, cheers for sharing the link, dude, to that book. Hopefully someone will find that. So yeah, I talked about Cloak of Deception. So I guess that'll be my next history of video that I do. Oh, and believe it or not, Star Wars Theory, George Lucas was involved with that book as well. For your information. Ezra says, that book sounds good. I always found how he described moons, or muns should I say, and other things to be great. Paints a good picture. Plus I love anything Phantom Menace related. Aye man, and the cool thing, I don't know if Ezra knows this, but I just like holding the books. It's for the photo op. Never read it, never read it. I like Star Wars. So Ezra, for your information, you've got Darth Plagueis, and then you read Cloak of Deception, and then you get to read Shadowhunter, and these all kind of like are intertwined. Because the EU's like that, it's all interconnected, but these specifically they go together, and then once you've read those, and only once you've read those, you read the Phantom Menace novelization, which George was involved in, written by Teddy Brooks, like a fantasy writer, and this goes into like the Rule of Two and Darth Bane and stuff like that. It actually starts out different than the movie. It starts out with Anakin on Tatooine. From what I can remember, it's like it's the pod race where he demolishes what was Pod Racer. So there you got like a quadrilogy there. It's awesome. Looks cool on the shelf as well. Star Wars Theory. It looks good on your shelf. It can. I'm sure these would gather dust really well. While we're at it, just because they're awesome, there's the Attack of the Clones one, written by R.A. Salvatore, who did Vector Prime. It's over there, which obviously we all covered on Star Wars Marvel Purists channel not that long ago. A lot of fun. Great book. You almost didn't do it because of the backlash you got for killing Chewbacca. Spoilers. But it was actually Teddy Brooks. Him and Teddy Brooks are pals, so Teddy Brooks was like, "Are you crazy? Like, do it." And then he got to meet George Lucas. George Lucas picked him out of the hat. So, well, that's not giving him enough credit. He picked him for his good writing. I haven't read any of the novelizations yet. I might be a fake fan. Nah, Vex, you've got the movies. It's just if you want to learn more. Ezra says, "That's awesome, man. Thank you. I need to clip this up and take notes." Yeah, the content's evergreen. You can come back, hopefully. Ezra's not as toxic as me. He's a nice guy. I'm only nice compared to all the other toxic people like Darth Paz and Purist and Narrow Dark's a nice guy. Keely's a nice guy. Logan's Legacy. I don't know if you're a good guy or not, because sometimes you're awesome and you're based, and other times you're a big shill. Darth Paz says, "Be right back." Cool, man. Make sure you come back, because I like seeing you in the chat. And Logan's Legacy, I was just kidding. The last stream, I was obviously a bit unsure what you were playing at, and then my wife, who moderates sometimes, came back and she's like, "No, he's joking. It's like he's just trolling." So, you're on my good side. It's all right. Matthew says, "R.A. Salvatore is a good author though, but not everyone is a great book." All right, I understand. And just while we've got Ezra here, this is my favourite EU novel. This was the first one I read. So I've got a soft spot for it. This was written by James Luceno as well. Love his writing. This is set It's a prequel to Revenge of the Sith. It happens like it leads up to the battle above Coruscant. Got loads of background about General Grievous. George Lucas was involved with this through Matthew Stover, who wrote the Revenge of the Sith novelization, which is full. It's packed full of EU references. It ties a lot of the EU into the. It ties a lot of EU in with the novelizations of the movies. You know, because it's all one universe type of thing. And the last one I'll share, just because it's the best EU novel ever written. Courtship of Princess Leia. Look, she's gorgeous on front of it. This is where, like, oh, is that the Matthew Stover quote? It's all canon. Everything published was canon. Was canon. Was canon. Yeah, beautiful book. People kind of roll their eyes at it when they see it, but this is where like Night Sisters and Dathomir come from. Amazing. It's the end of this book, like just before the end, it's epic. Really good Han Solo moments in this. People like to say that he's written out of character, but the more of the EU you read, you realise that Han Solo does behave irrationally in situations where he feels like he's out of control, you know? Amazing. Dave Wolverton, he's the true Dave. Like, Dave Filoni wishes he was this guy, because everything he does, Dave Filoni takes. So, what were we talking about? Dude, it's really easy to go on tangents when you're talking about this stuff. It's awesome. Han kidnapping Leia was peak fire, man. Yeah, and it worked out for him in the end, you know? Even the guy that Leia was supposed to be marrying in that Princess Soldier, I grew to actually like him. Oh, Liquid Blake's in here. Nice to see you, man. That's awesome. I've made it. Dan Blackroyd's in the chat. I'm here shipping Star Wars characters in secret. Just please don't tell Greg. I'll need to start doing it with Star Trek characters. Maybe you'll notice. So what book other than Shatterpoint are you reading at the moment, Scran? I was just saying it's Cloak of Deception by James Luceno, set just before The Phantom Menace. Awesome. So far I'm loving it. And I can read more than one page a week because I didn't have to share it with you guys. The more payoffs. Scran is reading the Rogue One files. Logan! People don't have the context, and no, I'm not actually reading it. My poor wee mum bought it for me, and I feel bad getting rid of it. Oh, no worries, Vex. Rogue, have I read? Matthew's asking if I've read Rogue Planet. No, I haven't. You'll need to tell me a bit about that one. I'm a fake fan. I don't know that one. Dan Blackroyd says, I got clickbaited. I thought this was a stream about the M. Night movie Mr. Glass. Unsubscribed. Well, I didn't even know you were subscribed, so it was worth it while it lasted, man. Gonna have to time Blake out. Aye, use your moderation powers in moderation. Aye, Mr. Glass is just a bit of a meme that happened last stream. And I was just saying, it's funny because what's his face? Samuel L. Jackson obviously plays both characters, and Disney ripped off the novel calling it Glass instead of Shatterpoint, so. Alright, okay. Nice one. I'll need to look that one up. I can buy it with Legends label just for the photo op, and then just put it on the shelf with the rest of them. Right, we're going off in tangents here. We need to get to this book eventually. Let's see. We recommended the scrapbook for Star Wars Theory. We're all caught up there. But yeah, there is a lot of words in it still, Theory, so you might struggle. There's loads of pictures though. Ezra says, I've got to bounce, Grant, loved hanging out, and I will watch back the rest tomorrow. Thanks for all the tips and knowledge, bro. P.S. You're a natural at chatting like this. I don't know about that, Ezra. Cheers for coming in though, man. It's good to see you. I hope you maybe learned something new. Dan Blackroyd says, that's the only EU book I have read. It's got a cool ship in it, Rogue Planet. I think I remember you saying that on the Spacing one time, to be honest with you. Purist is a fake fan. He says Rogue Planet ties into NGO. Don't all the books tie in together, Purist? I think you're having us on. I think I'll stick with Star Wars Theory for my NGO information, thank you. But aye, if Ezra's still there, I don't know if I'm a natural at this. I'm just blagging my way through it, hoping you don't expose me as a fake fan. So, again, losing our place here. So yeah, anyway, is there anything you guys wanted to kind of touch upon before we get into this? We're about to go into chapter 4 of Shatterpoint, aka Mr. Glass. So, aye, Theory knows everything. And even when he says he doesn't, his fans will tell you that he does. Star Wars normie. Yep, and we're going to learn more about that from Purist in due time. I know that Purist is going live in a few hours, so I want to wrap this up, and obviously you should all head over there. It'll be 2 AM for me, and I'm back at work tomorrow. It sucks, I've been off for 2 weeks, and I'm not ready to go back. Although, like, I've been staying up late, like watching like the Shill Awards and Melvin's channel and the Spacing. So suffering from lack of sleep at the moment, but it's all good. Yes, probably won't start till 9 PM. Got to run to Costco. Yep, Star Wars Theory is a OG Legends fan, because that's what OG EU fans call it. Just to summarise, in the last chapter, Mace survived an ambush and he basically joined this team that claims to be working for his ex-Padawan Depa Billaba. Or Depa Billaba, I'm going to pronounce that wrong anyway. And they've basically, they're saying that they've been ordered to bring him in. So bring him in to her, basically. So they've now entered the jungle of Harun Kal, and you get the picture. This isn't a place you want to be. You don't want to be left behind or get lost. It's dangerous. So Depa Billaba. Am I saying the Depa part right? Oh, dude, I was hoping to go back through these and make like a Scottish edition, what do you call it? Audiobook Depa. It's Depa Billaba. Cool. I've probably pronounced everything wrong. I'm gonna have to do it all again. Right. So, like I was saying, there's only 10 pages, so that's both sides. We'll get through it. So yeah, let's talk some real Star Wars. That's why we're here. Theory 2.0. That's you, Purist, because you're about to reach his sub count very soon. Pardon me. Before we get started, there was a couple of things I wanted to touch on. I made a note here. Yeah, OG Star Wars said she couldn't watch, so I lied to her and I said I wasn't gonna shout her out, but it's my favourite channel, so I have to. She did a stream today. I don't know if it was an impromptu stream, but she was basically talking about like Wikipedia and the kind of antics they get up to. I know I've had interactions with them before. They like to argue with you, and then they go into the the app or whatever it is, the website, and they change things to suit their narrative. And they're really flippant with like EU Legends content. Like they'll happily like change that stuff, and then the Disney canon, Disney continuity, they find it real. Oh, Matt Wilkins. His favourite channel isn't mine on sub. Well, Mr. Wilkins, I told you on your stream last time. You're the main reason I've gotten into the EU and started my channel, and kind of doing it the way I am. Just I agree, she has good videos. Just kind of turning on the camera, just saying my piece. We're covering EU novels, and that's how we're keeping Star Wars alive, buddy. Hey Matt, good to see you. It is good to see Matt Wilkins in the chat. It's awesome. Aye, big shot. It's all good, Matt. I know you're just kidding. While we've got you here, what do you think of Shatterpoint as a novel, as a story? A lot of people are kind of hit and miss on it. I'm enjoying it so far. I know people in the chat are they're telling me that they're enjoying it more than they did the first time they read it. I think it's maybe like a story they were expecting more from. It's maybe not the kind of story they wanted. But I even did the history of the novel, like a live version. And Matthew Stover wanted it to be kind of like Apocalypse Now, but with Jedi. So yeah, yet to be seen. There's been a couple of moments, kind of violent moments, I'd say. We don't usually sit about taking the mickey out of bigger channels, Matt. It's just sometimes when they say ridiculous things, it's hard not to mention it. I didn't enjoy it as much as most people did, but I'm just one opinion. Yeah, sure. So Matt doesn't like it, so pick another novel. Pick another one. We'll restart the whole thing. Oh, one last question for Matt. What do you think of The Courtship of Princess Leia? Because it's the best EU novel ever written. And if you don't agree, you might be as well just unsubbing right here, right now. If you don't mind, look, loud kids in the background, I can jump on for a minute if you want company on the stream. I would. I don't know. How do I get Matt Wilkins a link to my stream? I've never done this before. Because we are going to start reading the next chapter of the book, but I'd love to talk to you for a minute. I don't know how to do this. I don't think he has Twitter, and I'm using my phone to do this. Invite, click invite button, copy link, drop in chat. Okay, how do I invite? Oh, if Matt gives me another message, I'll click on his name and I'll invite him. No worries. Professional YouTuber here. Like I'm saying, I need to upgrade all my gear so that I can do this properly, you know? Even if, are the moderators able to give Matt an invite? Another message, there we go. It's not giving me the option to invite him. Let's see. I don't want to hide him either. If you can't, that's fine. Didn't want to pressure you. A little bit of pressure, but it's good. Like I'd love the opportunity to speak to you, Matt. Big influence on the channel. If I can work this out, it'd be awesome. Nah, we're struggling. Yeah, no worries. I'll tell you what, Matt. I'd absolutely love the opportunity to talk to you, and I hope this doesn't put you off, and you'll never want to come and talk to me again. But I can reach out to you, and I can work that out. I do these around this time every Monday, so that'd be a blast. Can you send them link in an email? Yeah, I think it'd be good to, if we do it another time, that'd be awesome. I'm really unprepared. Cheers, Matt. I appreciate it, man. That's awesome. I don't know when you turned up, but we've been talking about Star Wars for a good bit, and we're going to get into the next chapter and cover some real Star Wars. If you want to stick around and listen for a bit, that'd be awesome. Yeah, cool stuff. I'm a bit flabbergasted. Like unexpected. I did not expect that to happen, and unfortunately, I'm not equipped. So, right. Oh, the nerves are settling in. Oh, Matt Wilkins is going to be. I will get him another time, Vex. Hopefully, Matt's going to be on. I need to plug this while we're talking about it. Matt's going to be on Star Wars Marvel Purists channel. Covering the next 2 books in the NGO series. Really awesome that he's got him on there. I understand Matt's a big fan of that series. I remember watching Matt's. I think it was maybe even one of his early videos where he's defending the EU, and he's talking about Heir of the Empire, and he's saying how people would they would trash the new Jedi Order, saying that like the Yuuzhan Vong couldn't be seen in the Force, and he says, well, where do you think that comes from? Timothy Zahn did it in Heir of the Empire first with the Isla Miri. Everyone loves those books, you know. They kind of pick and choose the things to complain about when it's all connected, you know. But yeah, that's a really big undertaking that Purist is doing on his channel, and it's really awesome. It's a big task, and I know HoloNet, is it Zizan? He came on the Vector Prime stream, and he was saying that, oh, Captain Keeley, good to see you, man. It was good talking to you the other night on Decrepit's stream that he did. Pardon me. So, yes, HoloNet's doing a New Jedi Order documentary, and he said he was going to release it all as like a 13-hour like video, but now it's oh, you're oh so I don't know much about it. Purist wants to reveal it on his stream, so I'll not say anything else. 7 weekly parts. Yeah, so sorry, Purist, I forgot you were doing that. I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to the professionals to talk about it. But he is releasing a documentary, and this is stuff he said. He's got like interviews from like all the authors. He actually, I came into contact with them because when we all kind of decided to start talking about Vector Prime, first of all, I think Purist and OG Star Wars were doing their content on it, and then I released my history of video where I did all my research and stuff, and that was before the stream that we did. And then HoloNet actually saw my video, and he was like, oh, it's really good to see all this stuff getting shared. And A lot of those infograms that I like to use, he actually made those, so I need to start giving him credit for those. And aye, good. I basically said to him we were doing that stream, so he managed to get a chance to talk about it. It was awesome. I'd say that's still the highlight of my time on YouTube, is getting to be on that stream and feel involved in that. Apart from Matt Wilkins asking me to come on, I think that maybe takes the cake there. So my other big mistake was Tim from United Spacers Alliance. He asked me to come on stream, and I'd never done it before. I was like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to manage. I was actually busy. I had family stuff going on that I couldn't get away from. So, yep, I agree, Matt. Purist's videos are really enjoyable, and I know he's a big fan of yours. He might. I don't know if he said that to you himself, but he's a big admirer of your channel. I'm pretty sure all of us here are. People like Star Wars Theory, Stupendous Wave, they're all out there claiming to be like the oldest running Star Wars based channels, and it's like Matt Wilkins has been here all that time, you know, to the point where he's barely even talking about Star Wars anymore. He likes his board games instead. But nah, they don't know what they're talking about. Star Wars Theory's never inspired me to read a book. He doesn't even like reading them himself, you know. So, anywho's, we are on chapter 4, the Summertime War, and as it says, they've just entered the jungle on Harun Kal. They're heading towards Depa Billaba. You're stuck watching Clone Wars at the moment. Just skip ahead. Skip ahead and watch the Ewok movies again. I've got them here. Physical media, we're not watching them on Disney Plus anyway. Like, to be honest, I would never have really bothered. It was Matt Wilkins that always talked about the Ewoks, and I was like, oh, that's just because he grew up watching it. And then Purist and J-Man did a stream about it, and I was like, maybe there is something more to this. And then you got the same one, awesome. And then it's a shame there's no like behind the scenes or anything on it. And then someone in Theory's chat asked him if he could do like a live watch through, and he was just like, he just laughed and said no. And I was like, right, well, I'm going to cover these movies because he's claiming to be I don't know how much you know about it, but he's been claiming to be like a George Lucas purist, while saying that George Lucas had no involvement in the EU. George didn't care about that stuff. Only the movies and TCW count, which is the most infuriating. And what else was he saying? Yeah, he says he only liked the books that had anything to do with, was it like the prequel era or something? But when anyone asks him about this stuff, like he either patches it or he brushes it aside, or he just has nothing. He has nothing to say about it. It's weird. Like, we're all in here tonight, and as soon as something gets said, we're all like, oh yeah, that's awesome, I love this, blah blah blah. Do you remember what happened? It's really good. But he's just like, meh. Yeah, it was fine. I get the feeling he's more of like a definitely a casual fan, but because he's got that subscriber count, people assume that he knows what he's talking about. And the more he does these streams, it gets exposed that he doesn't, basically. But like, those of us that call it out, like, we're the ones getting treated like we're toxic and stuff like that. And I know Matt Wilkins probably knows all about that. From what I can tell, he's like a really nice guy, you know what I mean? Anyways, folks, I've been ranting for almost 60 minutes, and I'd love to get into chapter 4 and share that with you. Or you can go to Star Wars Theory's channel and play Outlaws and watch Skeleton Crew. It's up to you. Here we go. Single file through the jungle, Chalk picked their path, parting gleam fronts, tipping gripleaf trailers aside with the muzzle of the thunderbolt. Mace followed perhaps 10 metres back, with Nick close behind his shoulder. Besh and Lesh brought up the rear together, switching positions from time to time, covering each other. Mace had to look sharp to keep track of Chalk. Once they were well into the jungle, he could no longer easily feel any of the Karunai in the force. His gaze had a tendency to slip aside from them, to pass over them without seeing unless he firmly directed his will, a useful talent in a place where humans were just another prey animal. Occasionally a force pulse, as unmistakable as an upraised hand, came from one or another of the Karunai, and they could all stop in their tracks. Then seconds or minutes of stillness, listening to wind rustle and animal cries, eyes searching among green shadow and greener light, reaching into the force through a riot of lives for what? Vinecat? Militia patrol? Stobor? Then a wave of relaxation, clear as a sigh. Some threat Mace could not see or feel had passed, and they walked on. It was even hotter under the trees than in full sunlight. Any relief due to shade was cancelled by the damp, smothering stillness of the air. Though Mace heard a constant ruffle of leaves and branches high above, the breeze never seemed to reach down through the canopy. They broke out into a gap. Was Baby Yoda there? There's gaps. They broke out into a gap, and Nick called a halt. The jungle canopy layered a roof above them, but the folds of ground here were clear for dozens of meters around. Smooth grey-gold trunks of jungle trees becoming cathedral buttresses supporting walls of leaf and vine. Upslope, a spring-fed pond brimmed over into a steamy sulphur-scented stream. Chalk moved into the middle of the gap, lowered her head, and went entirely still. A force wave passed out from her and broke across Mace, and 35 years fell away. For a delicious instant, he was once more a boy, returned to the canopy of Gosh. Windu, after a lifetime in the Jedi Temple, feeling for the first time the silken warmth of a Karun's force call to an Ak. Then it passed, and Mace was again a grown man, again a Jedi Master, tired and worried, frightened for his friend, his order, and his republic. Within minutes, a crashing outside the gap heralded the arrival of large beasts, and soon the jungle wall parted to admit a grasser. For anyone that's not been following, grassers are like these big creatures that live on the planet. They work in tandem with the Karunai, I believe, kind of like the Rancor with the Night Sisters, the Dathomirian witches. Within minutes, a crashing outside the gap heralded the arrival of the large beasts, and soon the jungle wall parted to admit a grasser. It lumbered into the gap on its hind legs, its 4 anterior limbs occupied with ripping down greenery and stuffing it into a mouth large enough to swallow Mace whole. It chewed placidly, bovine contentment in all 3 of its eyes. It turned these eyes toward the humans one at a time. First the right, then the left, then the crown, assuring itself that none of its 3 eyes spied a threat. 3 more grassers tore their way into the gap. All 4 were harnessed for riding, the wide saddles cinched above and below their foreshoulders, exactly exactly as Mace remembered. One wore a dual saddle setup, the secondary saddle slung reversed at the beast's mid-shoulder. All 4 grassers were thin, smaller than Mace remembered. The largest of them might not have topped 6 meters at full stretch, and their grey coat were dull and coarse, a far cry from the sleek, glossy behemoths he'd ridden all those years ago. So is he saying that these creatures have, like, gotten smaller, or now that he's older, they seem smaller? I don't know. We've lost a few in the chat. That tends to happen when you're listening to me try and read, so you can always come back and listen in your own time. That's awesome. This was as troubling as anything he'd yet seen. Had these Karunai abandoned the fourth pillar? Nick reached up to take the knotted mounting rope of the dual-saddled grasser. Come on, Master Windu, you're riding with me. Where are your axe? Around, can you feel them? And now Mace could. A ring of predatory wariness outside the green walls, savagery and hunger and devotion tangled into a semi-sentient knot of let's find something to kill. Nick rope walking up the flank of the grasser and slid into the upper saddle. You'll see them if you need to see them. Let's hope you don't. Is it no longer customary to introduce a guest to the acts of the Gosh? You're not a guest, you're a package. Nick slid a brace-fine goad out of his holster beside the saddle. Mount up, let's get out of here. Without even understanding why he did it, Mace moved away into the middle of the gap. One breath composed his mind. The next expressed his nature into the force around him. Jedi serenity balancing buried temper, devotion to peace tipping the scales against a guilty pleasure in fighting. Nothing was hidden here. Light and dark, pure and corrupt, hope, fear, pride, and humility. He offered up everything that made him who he was, with a friendly smile, lowered eyes, and hands open at his sides. Then he sent rippling through the force the call he'd been taught 35 years before, and he got no answer. Slipping through the walls of the gap, measured tread blending seamlessly with the wind rustle and fly buzz, horned reptoid heads questing, lidless oval eyes of gleaming black. Windu, a hiss from Nick. Don't move. Triangular fangs scissored along each other as jaws that could crush durasteel worked and chewed. Steaming drool trailed down mouthfuls of scaled hide thick enough to stop a lightsaber. Splay-toed feet and shovel-sized claws churned kilos of dirt with every step. Muscular armoured tails as long as their landspeeder-sized bodies whipped sinuously back and forth. The act dogs of Harun Kal, 3 of them. Nick hissed again. Back up, just back up, straight toward me, very slowly. Don't show them your back. They're good dogs, but if you trigger their hunt-kill instincts. The beasts circled, switching tails that could break Mace in half. Their eyes, hard-shelled and lidless, glittered without expression. Their breaths all stank of old meat, and their hides gave off a leathery musk. And for an instant, Mace was on the sand in the Circus Horrificus and the bills of Nar Shaddaa. That's a purist's favourite character, right? Nar Shaddaa. Surrounded by thousands of screaming spectators at the mercy of Gorgon the Hutt. He understood now why he had done this, why he'd had to, because in that instant's vision of the long-ago arena, Depa was at his side. Was that their last mission together? Could it be? It seemed so long ago. What are you thinking so far? Again, I love the way Stover is very descriptive in the way he writes. Pretty good. Cheers, Narrow Dark. Glad you're following along. Right, here we go. These are generally my favourite parts of the book, from the private journal of Mace Windu. I had come to Nar Shaddaa to track down... Did I call Nar Shaddaa a person earlier? Apologies, fake fan. I had come to Nar Shaddaa to track down exotic animal smugglers who had sold attack-trained ack dogs to the Red Laro terrorists of Lannick, and Deppa had followed me to the smuggler's moon because she had suspected I might need her help. How right she was. Even together, we barely survived. It was a terrible fight against mutated giant acts for the amusement of the Circus Horrificus patrons. But remembering it in the jungle, I found that my eyes filled with tears. On that day in Nar Shaddaa, she showed me blade work. Right, let me start that again. On that day in Nar Shaddaa, she showed me blade work that surpassed my own. She had continued to grow and study and progress in Vaapad as well as the Force. She made me so very proud. It had been years since she had passed her trials of knighthood. She had long been a Jedi Master and a member of the Council, but for one day, she had again been struggling here. For that one day, we had again been Mace and Deppa, Master and Padawan, pitting the lethal efficiency of Vaapad against the worst of the galaxy could throw at us. We fought as we had so many times, a perfectly integrated unit, augmenting each other's strengths, countering each other's weaknesses, and on that day, it seemed we should have never done anything else. As Jedi Knights, we were unbeatable. As Masters, members of the Council. What have we won? Anything? Or have we lost everything? How is it that our generation came to be the first in 1,000 years to see our republic shattered by war? Pretty deep stuff there. Windu! Nick urgently hissed Mace back to the present. Mace lifted his head. Nick stared down at him from 3 meters above the jungle floor. Don't just stand there. All right. Mace lifted his hands, and all 3 ack dogs lay down. A touch of the Force and a turn of both palms, and the 3 dogs rolled onto their backs, black tongues lolling to the side between razor-sharp teeth. They panted happily, gazing at him with absolute trust. Nick said something about dipping himself in Tusker poop. Mace moved to one dog's head, sliding the palm of his hand between the triangle that 6 vestigial horns formed on the axe brow. His other hand he placed just beside the axe lower lip, so that the creature's huge tongue could flick Mace's scent into the olfactory pits beside his nostrils. He moved from one to the next, and then to the last. They took his scent, and he took their force field. With a severe formality such solemn occasions demanded, they respectfully learned each other. Magnificent creatures, so different from the mutant giants that Deppa and he had fought in the Circus Horrificus. In the fetid depth of Nar Shaddaa, Gargon had taken noble defenders of the herd and twisted them into vicious slaughters. Yeah, Nar Shaddaa is not a person, but Purist likes to use that clip on his streams. Makes me chuckle. And Mace could not help but wonder if something on Harun Kal might have done the same to Deppa. All right, he said, to everyone and no one, I'm ready to go. Every night they made a cold camp, no fire, and no need for one. The axe would keep predators at bay, and the Karunai did not mind the darkness. Though militia gunships did not fly at night, a campfire was sufficiently hotter than the surrounding jungle that it could be detected by satellite sensors. Nick explained dryly that you never knew when the Balawi might decide to drop a Doko on your head. He said that the government still had an unknown number of Doka platforms in orbit. The deorbiting kinetic anti-placement weapons were basically just missile-sized rods of solid durasteel with rudimentary guidance and control systems set in orbit around the planet. Cheap to make and easy to use, a simple command to the Doka's thrusters could kick it into the atmosphere on a course to strike any fixed position coordinates. Not too accurate, but then it didn't have to be. A meteorite strike on demand. For the Karunai, campfires were a thing of the past. Many of the nocturnal insects signaled each other with light, making the night sparkle like a crowded starfield. And the different kinds of glowvines were mildly phosphorescent in varying colours. They combined into a pale general illumination, not unlike faint moonlight. I really like the geography and stuff like that of Harun Kal. I know earlier in the book it described the planet, but a lot of this kind of world building I really appreciate. To be able to visualize where Mace is, obviously. The Grassers always slept standing, all six of their legs locked straight, eyes closed, still reflexively chewing. The Karunai had bedrolls lashed to their saddles. Mace used a wallet tent he kept in a side pocket of his kit bag. Once he split the pressure seal with his thumbnail, its internally articulated ribs would automatically unfold in transparent skin, to make a shelter large enough for two people. They would sit or kneel on the ground, sharing their meals. Once the food squares and candy they'd looted from the dead men ran out, their meals became strips of smoked grasser meat and a hard, cave-aged cheese made from raw grasser milk. Their water came from funnel plants, when they could find them. Waxy orange leaves that wrapped themselves in a watertight spiral 2 meters high, trapping rainwater to keep the plant's shallow root system moist. Otherwise, they filled their canteens from warm streams or bubbling springs that Chalk occasionally tasted. The pronounced safe to drink, even the ionic auto-sterilizer in Macy's canteen couldn't remove the faint rotten egg taste of sulfur. What does he have? An auto-sterilizer in his canteen. It's pretty neat. After they ate, Lesh would often pull a soft roll of raw thistle bark from his pack and offer it around. Nick and Mace always refused. Chalk might take a little, Besh a little more. Lesh would use his belt knife to carve off a hunk the size of 3 double fingers and stuff it into his mouth. Roasted and refined for sale, thistle was a mildly stimulating intoxicant. No more harmful than sweet wine. Raw, it was potent enough to cause permanent changes in brain chemistry. A minute of chewing would pop sweat across Lesh's brow and give his eyes a glassy haze, if there was enough vine light to see it by. What's it called? Thistle. You don't want to sell me thistle. Oh, Decrepit, good to see you, man. How you doing? I was telling people about your 50 plus stream that we did. If you're still in chat, let me know. We're going to take a quick water break. We've got the Rogue One book as a coaster right now for all the use it is. Oh, there he is. I'm well, brother. At work currently. Got you in the ear. Hope the day has been kind to you. Oh, cheers, dude. Yeah, I'm the same when I'm at work. That's kind of the only time I get to listen to streams and stuff while I'm working. Today wasn't too great. I went to start my car this morning and it wouldn't start, so I actually had to. I tried to jump start it, nothing. I had to go buy a new battery for the car, and I'm skint because obviously I'm getting my green card to come to the USA, so I'm skint. After that, spent all my holiday with my wife doing that like paperwork. I go back to work tomorrow, so I'm glad I can spend this time with all you talking Star Wars, try and relax before I get back to the grind. But aye, that's how my day went. Aye, if you missed the start of the stream, obviously you should go back. We had a good bit of a laugh earlier. Even Matt Wilkins turned up. That's awesome. So worth it. It's been a good day in that regard. Even Liquid Blake turned up. That was a shocker. I think everyone unsubbed from me today, so it's all good. We can't all be 1,000 plus sub channels like Star Wars Marvel Purist. Right, where'd I get to? The canteen. Right, okay. Mace learned a great deal about young Karunai, and, by implication, about the ULF, during these nights in camp. Nick was the leader of his little band, but not by any reason of rank. They didn't seem to have ranks. Nick led by force of personality, and by lightning use of his acid wit, like a jester in control of a royal court. He didn't talk of himself as a soldier, much less a patriot. He claimed his highest ambition was to be a mercenary. He wasn't in this war to save the world for the Karunai. He was in it, he insisted, for the credits. He constantly talked about how he was getting ready to blow this bloody jungle. Out there in the galaxy, there's real credits to be made. It was clear to Mace, though, that this was just a pose, a way to keep his companions at arm's length, a way to pretend he didn't really care. Mace could see that he cared all too much. Lesh and Besh were in the war from stark hatred of the Balawi. A couple of years before, Besh had been kidnapped by jungle prospectors. His missing fingers had been cut off, one at a time, by the Balawi, to force him to answer questions about the location of a supposed treasure grove of Lama's trees. When he could not answer these questions, in fact, the treasure grove was only a myth. They assumed he was just stubborn. If you won't answer us, one had said, we'll make sure you never answer anyone else either. Besh never spoke because he couldn't. The Balawi had cut out his tongue. He communicated by a combination of simple signs and an extraordinarily expressive force projection of his emotions and attitudes in many ways. He was the most eloquent of the group. Chalk proved a surprise to Mace, guessing what he had of what had happened to her. He'd expected that she would be fighting out of a personal vendetta, not unlike Lesh and Besh. On the contrary, even before joining the ULF, she and some members of their Gosh had hunted down the men who'd molested her, a 5-man squad of regular militia and their non-com, and given them the traditional Karun punishment for such crimes. He was called Tan Peltrokal, which roughly translated as Jungle Justice. The guilty men were kidnapped, spirited away 100 kilometers from the nearest settlement. They then stripped of equipment, clothing, food, everything, and released, naked in the jungle. Very, very few men had ever survived Tan Peltrokal. These didn't. So Chalk did not fight for revenge. In her own words, tough girl me, big, strong, good fighter. don't want to be, had to be. How I lived through that, through what they did, me, fought, me, never stopped fighting, and lived through it. Now I fight so other girls don't have to fight. Get to be girls, them. You follow? Only two ways to stop me. Kill me, or show me no girls have to fight. Sounds kind of like girl boss power. Didn't he let Geeks and Gamers catch wind of this novel? Mace understood. No one should have to be that tough. I'm still reading that like she's talking, sorry. Mace understood. No one should have to be that tough. I am impressed by how you move through the jungle, Mace said. Mace said to her once, in one of these old camps. It's not easy to see you even when I know you're there. Even your grasser is hard to track. She grunted, chewing bark. Her dismissive shrug was about as casual as Mace's question. That is, not very. That's an interesting way of using... He dredged from the depths of 35-year-old memory the Karun word for the force. Pelakotin. That's pretty cool. Pelakotin. Roughly, world power. Pelakotin. Is this something you've always been able to do? What Mace was really asking, what he was afraid to ask outright, did Depa teach you that? If she was teaching Jedi skills to people who were too old to learn Jedi discipline, people with no defense against the dark side, you don't use Pelakotin? You don't use Pelakotin, Chalk said. Pelakotin uses you. This was not a comforting answer. Mace recalled that the strict literal translation of the word was jungle mind. He discovered that he didn't really want to think about it. In his head, he kept hearing, I have become the darkness in the jungle. That's what he heard from Depa Baliba on the hologram in the introduction chapter. Jungle mind. I guess that's how these force users are kind of going mad, like out in the jungle. William says, Darth Pause, how do you feel about canon outside the Star Wars universe? Oh, that means Darth Pause has returned. Somehow, Darth Pause has returned. The background for that can be found in the Mr. Glass sourcebook. That'll tell you how Pause returned. Or if you play Fortnite, I think it tells you in Fortnite how that happened. Pause, if you've just come back, I don't know if you know this, but Matt Wilkins asked to be on my stream. Pretty cool. And I'm going to boast about it as long as I can. There is like a bit of a delay. I think it's like a 10-second delay or something like that. So, Scran, I'd ask you the same question. What do I think about canon outside the Star Wars universe? Do you mean like with other properties, or are you talking about like Disney continuity? Yes. Oh, so the first one. Other properties. I mean, because of how bad Disney Wars is, like I actually got into Star Trek. Like I'm really enjoying Star Trek. I think I know their novels and stuff are not canonical, so it's just the shows pretty much. So I don't really follow too many other kind of like universes like that. I mean I really like like Batman graphic novels, but I've never been like a comic book guy that follows that. That's what Purist's channel's for. I learned from him. What about you, William? What properties are you a fan of, or what do you think of canon outside of Star Wars? Like the EU, as awesome as the EU is, it's not. They weren't the first ones to do that, to keep that continuity. Decrepit says Star Wars is the main thing I care about, the canon. Yeah, like I think like Star Wars, it's part of it. It's that well maintained continuity, and that Battlestar Galactica. Okay, I've got the original ones somewhere. I've been working my way through. I really like those. What was I saying? I just lost my train of thought. Right. Yeah, we were talking about canon, continuity. Yeah, so Star Wars, it's a big part of what Star Wars is. And I think people that are just coming into Star Wars now don't realise how important that is to it. From like the early 90s up until 2012, 2014, it was a big deal, and fans followed that stuff. Decrepit showed a really good video on that stream we did, and it was like a Star Wars Celebration 2, and there was the camera zoomed in on this mother and daughter, and they were dressed up. She was dressed up as like Mara Jade, and she was having a lightsaber duel with her daughter. You know, an EU character back in the early 2000s. Star Wars fans, like, they love this stuff, and it matters. Like, continuity matters, and if you stop adhering to continuity, it means that like none of it matters. Like they say the books are still out there and you can still read them, but when they take away the importance of that, it kind of it makes it feel less important what you're investing in, especially if you're an OG EU fan that invested 30 plus years of your life following this thing, and then it's like, all right, it's gone, none of it matters. I think that's bad. That's a sin, to be honest. And like Filoni will say it's like what did Whitwer say? It's a campfire story. Star Wars is like a campfire story that can change with every retelling. It's like, right, so you're telling me you can go back to A New Hope and you can start changing things like oh, Luke didn't go with Obi-Wan that time, so none of it happened. You know, the droids didn't make it off the shuttle. They got blown up in the escape pod that time, you know? Oh, Luke decided to kill Darth Vader at the end. So, yeah. It's just like, it takes away the importance. It takes away it takes away the importance. It takes away the impact. And it really starts to mess with the mythology of the whole thing. So, oh, we'll change the color of a lightsaber here, it'll be fine. And then it's like anything, you give someone an inch to take a mile, and then you keep making excuses, and then before you know it, you've got Disney Star Wars, and they try to decanonize everything. Anywho's, rant over. It's just a fictional world, guys. No one cares. It's not real. I no worries, William. I hope that kind of answered your question. Darth Paws doesn't even like Star Wars, so I don't know what you're asking him for. Luke UK says, when Disney can waste 180 million on the Acolyte, can't see why they couldn't have set up a division that could continue that would have carried on with the EU, even if just novels and comics. Yep, agree with that. Decrepit says, If we don't care about continuity, then it has no value. That's how Disney views it. They thought they'd just print money. Little did they know, they, yep. I'm not as brave as your channel, Decrepit. They messed up by changing continuity. Now they're hated. Yep, exactly. They paid all that money. Was it 4 billion, including like stocks or whatever? They paid all that money for a reason. Like this stuff all added to that value, and they couldn't see it. They just said, right, none of that stuff matters. You know, it's not canon, but we better get rid of it so we don't have to adhere to it. It's ridiculous. And then by doing that, they immediately downgraded, immediately lost the value of that. And like I think we talked about it last stream. If it was in my hands, you know, I don't want to own Star Wars. There's better people prepared for that. But you know, you don't even have to touch the EU. You allow the authors to keep doing what they're doing, and then you go into the future, past legacy era, and you can reference it. You can reference stuff, and you can make whatever you want as long as you're abiding by the guidelines set and directives set by George, and you're not contradicting his movies, the pillars of Star Wars. There's so many ways they could have done it. Like, I wouldn't even have adapted the books. Just leave them alone, because you've always got, like, books don't transfer to screen very well, I don't think, usually. Right, let's see. One. Oh, I must have passed it, right? 1, 2. That can't be right. I've been reading for ages. Oh well, keep going. I'm not in a rush to get to work tomorrow, so. Quit asking me questions, William, and I'll get through the book. The grasser's lumbering pace was smooth and smoothing, to make better time. It walked on both hinds and mid-limbs. This put its back at such an angle that Mace's rear-facing saddle let him recline somewhat, his shoulders resting on the grasser's broad, smooth spine, while Nick rode the four-shoulder saddle, peering over the top of its head. These long, rocking rides through the jungle struck Mace with a deep uneasiness. Facing only backward, he could never see what was ahead, only what he had already passed, and even that had meanings. Even that had meanings he could not penetrate. Much of what he looked at, he could not be wholly sure if it was plant or animal, poisonous, predatory, harmless, beneficial, perhaps even sentient enough to have a moral nature of its own, good or evil. It's not good or evil, it's a grey Jedi. Only one more Star Wars universe. Oh, I'm just reading the chat, sorry. Matthew, the merchandise for the Acolyte was pretty bad. I don't know anyone that's buying that stuff. But I wouldn't take, if you go into a store and take pictures of the toy section, I wouldn't take that as evidence of how bad they're doing. I mean, they are doing bad, but there's ways to tackle this stuff, and that's not one of them. Echo Base Network. Let's see. He had a queasy feeling that these rides were symbolic of the war itself, for him. He was backing into it, even in the full light of day. He had no clue what was coming, and no real understanding of what had passed. Utterly lost. Darkness would only make it worse. He hoped he was wrong. Symbols are slippery, uncertain. During the day, he saw the act dogs in glimpses through the jungle, as they ranged and rugged terrain around. They went before and behind, patrolling to guard the others from jungle predators, of which these jungles did many that were large enough to kill a grasser. The three acts were bonded to Besh Lesh and Chalk. Nick had no ack of his own. Hey, growing up on the streets of Pelik Baw, what would I do with an ack? What would I feed it? People? Hey, well, actually, now that I think about it, you could find one now, Mace said. You have the power, I felt it. You could have a force-bonded companion like your friends do. Are you kidding? I'm too young for that kind of commitment. Really? She, worse than being married. Mace said distantly, I wouldn't know. Mace would often get drowsy from the heat and the grasser's smooth gait. What little sleep he got at night was plagued by feverish dreams, indistinctly menacing and violent. The first morning after, he'd triggered his wallet tense autofold and tucked it back into his hand-seized pocket in his kit bag. Nick had heard his sigh and saw him rub his bleary eyes. Nobody sleeps well out here, he told Mace with a dry chuckle. He'll get used to it. Day travel was a dreamlike flow from jungle gloom to brilliant sun and back again as they crossed grasser roads. The winding strips of the open meadow left behind by grasser herds as they ate their way through the jungle. These were often the only times he'd see Chalk and Besh and Lesh, their grassers, and their acks. Using the ack dogs to keep in contact, they could spread out for safety. Open air was the only relief they got from the insects. It was the territory of dozens of species, of lightning-fast, insectivorous birds, the dogflies and pinch beetles, and all the varieties of wasp and bee and hornet, struck mostly to the relative safety of shade. Mace's skin was a mass of bites and stings that required considerable exercise of Jedi discipline to avoid scratching. The Karunai occasionally used juices from the couple of different kinds of crushed leaves to treat particularly nasty or dangerous stings, but in general they seemed not to really notice them, in the way a person rarely noticed the way boots unnaturally constrict toes. They'd had a lifetime to get used to it. Stover always uses these really interesting illustrations, like with the boots constricted by toes. He talked about jesters taking control of royalty and stuff like that. Though they would have moved faster by following the grasser roads, frequent overflights by militia gunships made that too risky. Nick informed him that people riding grassers were shot on sight. Every hour or two, the acks gave warning of approaching gunships. Their keen ears could pick up the hum of repulsor lifts from more than a kilometre away. Despite the jungle's constant buzz and rustle, whir and screech, and even the distant thunder of the occasional minor volcanic eruption, Mace got enough glimpses of these gunships to have an idea of their capabilities. They looked to be customised versions of ancient Sienna turbostorms, blaster boats, retrofitted for atmospheric close assault work. Struggled with that one. Relatively slow but heavily armoured, bristling with cannons and missile launchers, large enough to transport a platoon of heavy infantry. They seemed to travel in threes. The militia's ability to maintain air patrols despite the metal-eating fungi and moulds was explained by the straw-coloured shimmer that haloed them as they flew. Each gunship was large enough to carry its own surgical field generator. From the height of the brush and young trees on the grasser roads, the most recent ones seemed to be at least 2 or 3 standard years old. Mace mentioned this to Nick. He grunted grimly. Yeah, they don't only shoot us, you know. They don't only shoot us, you know. When Balawi gunners get bored, they start blasting grasser herds just for fun. It's been a couple of years since we've been stupid enough to gather more than 4 or 5 grassers in one place. And even then, we have to use axe to keep them separated enough that they don't make easy targets. Mace frowned. Without constant contact and interaction with others of their kind, grassers could become depressed, sick, sometimes even psychotic. This is how you care for your herds.
Though he couldn't see Nick's face, he could hear the look on it. Got a better idea? Beyond winning the war, Mace had to admit he had not. Something else bothered him. Nick had said a couple of years, but the war had begun only a few months before. When he mentioned this, Nick replied with a derisive snort. Your war began a few months ago. Ours has been going since before I was born. So Mace's face. So began Mace's lesson in the summertime war. Nick wasn't sure how it started. He seemed to think it was an inevitable collision of lifestyles. The Kurunai followed their herds. The herds destroyed the hostile jungle. The destruction of the jungle made Karun survival possible, keeping down the drill mites and the buzzworms, and the gripleaf and vine cats, and the million other ways the jungle had to kill a being. The Balawi, by contrast, harvested the jungle. They needed it intact to promote the growth of all the species and woods and exotic plant extravates that were the foundation of Harun Kal's entire civilized economy. And grassers were especially partial to thistlebark and portak leaf. Karun guerrillas had been fighting Balawi militia units in these jungles for almost 30 years. Nick thought it possibly started with some bust-out jungle prospectors down on their luck, deciding to blame their bad luck on Karunai and their grassers. He guessed these Jups got liquored up and decided to go on a grasser hunt, and he guessed that after they wiped out the herd of some unlucky Gosh, the men of the Gosh discovered that the Balawi authorities weren't interested in investigating the deaths of their animals. So the Gosh decided they might go on a hunt themselves, a Balawi hunt. Why shouldn't they? They had nothing left to lose, Nick said. With their herds slaughtered, their Gosh was finished anyway. Sporadic raids had gone back and forth for decades. The Karunal highland was a big place. The bloodshed might die down for years at a time. Did I say that right? The bloodshed might die down for years at a time. But then a series of provocations from one side or the other would inevitably spark a new flare-up. Karun children were raised to hate the Balawi. Balawi children in the uplands were raised to shoot Karunai on sight. It was a very old-fashioned war on the Karun side. The metal-eating fungi restricted them mostly to simple weapons, usually based on chemical explosives of one kind or another, and living mounts instead of vehicles. They couldn't even use comm units, because the Balawi government had geosynchronous detector satellites in orbit that could pinpoint comm commissions instantly. They coordinated their activities through a system of forced communication that had hardly more sophisticated than smoke signals. Pause says, oh, Decrepit says the jungle sounds like a nightmare. Yeah, I agree. Darth Pause says Mr. Glass is the king of the jungle. Yeah, I wouldn't like to be walking through this jungle, Decrepit. What did that... It said there's fungi that eats, like, metal, essentially. So they're using, like, primitive weapons. There we go. By the time Nick was old enough to fight, the summertime war had become a tradition, almost a sport, late in the spring, when the winter rains were long enough gone that the hills were passable. The more adventurous young men and women of the Kurunai would band together on their grassers for their yearly forays against the Balawi. The Balawi, in turn, would load up their scream crawlers and grind out to meet them. Each summer would be a fever dream of ambush and counter-ambush. Steamcrawler, sabotage, and grasser shooting. A month or so before autumn brought the rains again, everyone would go home to get ready for next year. Some of Depa's dazzling success was now explained. Mace realised she didn't have to create a guerrilla army, she'd found one ready-made. Bloodied and hungry. This clone war of yours, who cares? You think anyone on Harun Kal gives a handful of snot who rules on Coruscant? We kill Seppies because they give weapons and supplies to the Balawi. The Balawi support the Seppies because they get stuff like those gunships for free too. They used to have to buy them and ship them in from Opari. You follow? This is our war, Master Windu. Nick shook his head with amused contempt. You guys are just passing through. That's wild. You make it sound almost like fun. Almost. Nick grinned down at him. It's the most fun you can have while you're sober, and you don't really have to be all that sober. Look at Lesh. I admit I don't know a lot about war, but I know it's not a game. Sure it is, you keep score by body count. That's revolting. Nick shrugged. Hey, I've lost friends. People who were as much family to me as anyone can be. But if you let the anger chew you up inside, you're just going to do something stupid and get yourself killed. Maybe along with other people you care about. And fear is just as bad. Too cautious gets people just as dead as too bold. Your answer is to pretend it's fun. Nick's grin turned sly. You don't pretend anything. You have to let it be fun. You have to find the part of yourself that likes it. The Jedi have a name for that. Yeah? Mace nodded. It's called the dark side. Wow. I was like, while reading Nick's like description of like how you should handle like anger and fear and stuff, I was like, is he kind of making sense? But no, it's the complete opposite. Like Mace says, that's like tapping into the dark side. You've got to find the part of yourself that enjoys like war and killing. It's kind of like a twisted view on it. Right, folks, I'm gonna grab some. I'm gonna grab some water. Feel free to hang about. I'll be right back. I'm gonna bounce. Pause. I'll be right back. Hey guys, is Star Wars Crown still here? I'm a 26-year-old boy. I think this channel is really toxic, and you really shouldn't be subscribing here. But
Yes, it's me. It's Jacob. Flipping heck. I don't do it as good as Darth Melvin. Sorry, folks. I needed some water. Did you like that? I know. Sorry, Keely. I saw it on the way in. I'm like, I need to try that. Cheers, William. Poor Jacob. I just had to get the attention off me because Paws has been bullying me for days and days and days. Remember, there's real shells out there, Paws. But I mean, I do own that thing, so there you go. Did you see that? Star Wars Marvel Purist is at 1,000 subscribers. Yes, Knights of Undercover. He made it. He made the milestone, the threshold. He should have been there long ago. He's a brilliant channel. Deserves it. Deserves all of them. Have you read The Thieves' Crown? No, Pause, and you know why? Because I've been getting bullied into playing KOTOR before I can read it. So who have we got to blame for that? That takes... I don't know how Melvin does that. I've lost my voice doing the Jacob voice. Hey, there's Stieg. What a scran delicious channel. Cheers, Stieg. I still need to get Stieg on for a chat. I meant to do it during the holidays, but I've just been busy, man. Stieg, I had Matt Wilkins on the channel earlier. Well, not on the channel, he was in the chat and he actually asked if he could come on and talk to me. I was like, I would love nothing more, but I don't have the setup. I'm not equipped, so I probably could do it. I'll need to work out how to do it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. That's a good shout. I didn't even think about that. The Din Djarin mug. Pause. You're just projecting your own your shill ways upon me. Stieg, I had a cup of tea earlier. It was helping, but I'm all out of tea, so Wilkins is my buddy. Don't tell him I said that. We mostly just insult each other playfully. Yeah, because I told him a couple of my favourite channels, and he was like, "What about mine? What about mine?" Vector Prime has some dust on it. Well, Pause, that's because I actually read it, and I've not had to read it again since, so... That's it. That one's for you, Pause. It's tiny. It's a wee tiny version just for you, pal. Dude, how have I been talking for this long? My goodness. Cheers for sticking around, folks. I know it's been a long trudge, but it's fun. It's fun to hang about and talk about real Star Wars. Where did I get to? Well, let's see what Stieg's saying first. I am getting 2 Star Wars hardcovers soon. The Cesta Deception and the Yoda novel, Dark Rendezvous, is that right? 7 out of 10 stream, thanks, Pause. Yeah, I'd love to get Dark Rendezvous on hardback. Yeah, I think, Matthew, is that what you're referring to? The sci-fi hardback versions? They are the smaller ones, eh? I think they're cool because obviously not all of the NGO were done in hardback, so if you collect the ones that weren't, you can have those that are like roughly the same size. Plagueis and the Yoda book, Stieg says, are expensive in hardcover now.
Yeah, I know. Did you get hold of Plagueis yet? I know you were saying that's one of the last ones you needed. Do you, Batuse the Manslayer says, do you believe that Lucas is the ultimate source of legitimacy when it comes to canon? Oh, Lucas. All right. Sorry, I was just being an idiot there. Do I think he's the ultimate authority? Well, he made the movies, which are the pillars. Wait, I'll quickly finish. Well, Stieg didn't get Plagueis yet. Oh, that sucks. You'll get there eventually, man. You'll find it for a good price, hopefully. Batusi, I don't know if you're asking that for like some sort of agenda, but Lucas he made the movies, which are the pillars, and it's understood from the beginning that the EU was bound by his movies, and they were approved and authorized by him, so they're all canon, and they follow the directives that he set. And when George, this is a quote from George, when he was approached by, EU and the films were canon. When George was approached by licensing, his own company, Lucasfilm Licensing, they asked if they could do novels, and he said, well, do sequels because I'm not going to do them. So George never intended to make sequels. He had ideas over the years. He had no desire to. I ask in good faith. I am what you would call I am what you would call a shill, but I am interested in both companies. No, I don't think you're a shill. I don't really know you, so. Oh, so you're. Yeah, so. Right. I appreciate you asking in good faith. So, yeah, I think George's movies they're the pillars on top, and everything else. That's why you've got the hierarchy system. It's not separate canons. It's just tiers. So everything in C canon has to adhere to the movies. They can't contradict it. Under that are like maybe older publications that were made before continuity was being maintained. You've got like video games where the way you play them isn't exactly canon. You've got infinity stories which are like what ifs. So the beauty of Star Wars is that all of that's there, and it's all part of this carefully maintained continuity. And yes, there's a handful of contradictions. It's written by loads of different authors over a span of 30 plus years. Nothing's perfect. Star Wars isn't the first proper property to even do this. They just did it beautifully, and I'm sure Stieg will agree with that. It all counts. George has final say, but George never used the word canon, and he never said that my movies are canon and this isn't canon. He said time and time again, it's all part of the Star Wars saga. It's all part of the Star Wars universe. And when he talks about different worlds, he's talking about like areas of Lucasfilm. So he works in the movie world. So that's his world. He reserves that for him. And then he talks about like taking characters like Aayla Secura from the comic book world. There's the gaming world, the book world. The three pillars he talks about are the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. He calls it. That's him, licensing and fans. He says that everyone that expands this universe work for me, but there's so much of it I can't follow up on all of it. So he's entrusted licensing Howard Rothman to fill in the gaps. Like Anakin's scar, that was in the comics and the novels. So I don't think it's fair to say like George didn't make that. George didn't personally write all that stuff, so it doesn't count. He was overseeing it more closely sometimes than others. He approved it. I agree to some degree with you. I think is that when he referred his idea for the sequels, force us to choose between the official continuity and his. Yeah, but I get, but George never made sequels, and he said he wasn't going to make sequels. He had a few ideas. The ones he sold to Disney, they were just treatments that he sold with the property, you know, and he thought they were going to follow those, and they actually had elements of like the New Jedi Order in it, because he actually helped develop that book series. I think as fans, like, we're all pretty passionate, and when it comes to like talking about this stuff, we can get kind of like, you're wrong, I'm right, blah blah blah. For over 30 years, like, all of this stuff, whether you like it or not you personally, whether you're interested in it or not, or you've read some and you don't like it, it all counted. It was all treated, especially by Lucasfilm and Lucas Licensing, it was all treated with the same legitimacy. It was utilised in the movies. George loved the source books. I've got a clip on my channel where George says that there's over 5,000 characters in Star Wars, and he says we've got movies, we've got TV shows, we've got novels, games, cartoons, and he talks about the source books. He says you can go there and you can read up on like all these things, and there's a much larger world that wasn't there before in Star Wars, you know. So there's a lot of evidence out there from George himself that this stuff was part of the saga, and also that the new stuff, like, if you're saying you're referred to yourself as a shill, so I guess you like the new stuff. If you're saying, okay, there is value for sure. I am currently reading Heir to the Empire for the first time, and I plan to continue. Oh, nice one, dude. I'm glad. It's cool to see you giving it a chance. I've actually got a few, not to plug my own channel, I've got some videos that cover the history of the novel, so like, maybe after you've read one of them, you can go and watch it and get a bit of the background, because I like to share a lot of like the history of how the novels came to be, and also George's involvement, because a lot of people, like, they brush that away. They're like, George wasn't involved. He wasn't. He very much was involved. But if you're going to say that George's involvement means that it's canon, like, well, you have to include everything that he approved and gave guidance on. But then you're saying the Disney stuff, he's had zero involvement in that. It's like, oh, he went to the set and held Baby Yoda. It's like, all right, like, he loves, he said all along he loves technology. I think George is there to see, like, the, what do they call it, the volume. Even on TCW, a lot of his interest, like, he stepped away until he saw, like, what they were doing with, like, CGI and, like, computer graphics and stuff, which he's been pushing since 1977, or probably before, you know. Anyway, I've got a few pages left, and I think canon and continuity is one of those topics you could argue all day. Stieg has a quote from Lucas where he said he is not really involved with Clone Wars. Yeah, I included that in my Continuity Wars video, which is not intended to, like, tell people not to watch that show. It's just, it does contradict continuity. 7 out of 10, Pause says. Is that for the EU in general? Or is that what you're giving Outlaws, your favourite Star Wars game? Cheers for joining in on the conversation, Batusi. Is that like an Adam West Batman reference? Because that's pretty cool. Good to see is defending the EU in the chat. I love to see it. Right, dudes. I'm going to keep chatting away, and you can just listen to me in the background. Or if you've got your own copy, keep following along, right? Night. Mace sat cross-legged before... Oh, and Batusi, I feel like I do recognise your name. There's probably times on like X where like we've interacted, so no hard no hard feelings or anything, man. But don't expect the same from Darth Paws because he's a troll. No worries, man. Mace sat cross-legged before his wallet tent, stitching a tear in his pants left by a brush with a brass vine. He had his fake datapad propped against his thigh. Its screen provided enough light that he could do the needlework without drawing blood. Its Durasteel casing showed black mildew and the beginning of fungal scarring, but it had been adapted for the Huruncal jungles, and it still worked well enough. They'd finished their cheese and smoked meat. The Karunai field-stripped their weapons by touch, reapplying Portak amber to the vulnerable surfaces. They spoke together in low voices, mostly shattering opinions on the weather and the next day's ride, and whether they might reach Depa's ULF band before they were intercepted by an air patrol. When Mace finished patching his pants, he put away the stitcher and silently watched the Karunai, listening to their conversation. After a time, he picked up the datapad's recording rod and flicked it on, fiddling with it for a moment to adjust its encryption protocol. When he had it set to his satisfaction, he brought the recording rod near his mouth and spoke very softly. From the private journals of Mace Windu. I've read war tales in the temple archives, from the early years of the Republic and before. According to these tales, soldiers in bivouac are supposed to speak endlessly of their parents or their sweethearts, of the food they would like to eat, or wine they wish they were drinking, and of their plans for after the war. The Karunai mention none of these things. For the Karunai, there is no after the war. The war is all there is. Not one of them is old enough to remember anything else. They don't know themselves even of the fantasy of peace. Like that death hollow we passed today. Deep in the jungle, Nick turned our grasser aside from our line of march to skirt a deep fold in the ground that was choked with a riot of impossibly lush foliage. I didn't have to ask why. A death hollow is a low point where the heavier than air toxic gases that roll downslope from the volcanoes can pool. The corpse of 100-kilo tusker lay with the... Start that again. The corpse of 100-kilo tusker lay just within its rim. Its snout only a metre below the clear air that could have saved it. Other corpses littered the ground around it. Rock crows and jacunas and other small scavengers it didn't recognise, lured to their deaths by the jungle's false promise of an easy meal. I said something along these lines to Nick. He laughed and called me a Balawi fool. There's no false promise, he said. There's no promise at all. The jungle doesn't promise. It exists, that's all. What's killed those little Ruskats wasn't a trap. It was just the way things are. Nick says that to talk of the jungle as a person, to give it the metaphoric aspect of a creature, any creature, that's a Balawi thing. It's part of what gets them killed out here. It's a metaphor that shades the way you think. Talk of the jungle as a creature, and you start treating it like a creature. You start thinking you can outsmart the jungle, or trust it, overpower it, or befriend it, deceive it, or bargain with it. And then you die. Not because the jungle kills you, you get it? Just because it is what it is. These are Nick's words. The jungle doesn't do anything. It's just a place. It's a place where many, many things live, and all of them die. Fantasizing about it, pretending it's something it's not, is fatal. That's your free life lesson for the day, he told me. Keep it in mind. I will. I have a feeling that this lesson applies equally well to this war. But how can I avoid pretending this war is something it's not? I don't yet know what real war really is. So far, I have only impressions. Vast, unknown, and unknowable. Living darkness. Deadly is this jungle, and my guide cannot be trusted. It really hits home, like how early on in the Clone Wars this is. He says it's only been a few months. Um, like Jedi weren't supposed to be doing this. You know, they're peacekeepers. Batusi says, I was reading Dawn of the Jedi, Enter the Void because I wanted to continue its chronological order, but I was recommended release order. I was a bit disappointed that so far back in the timeline it reads like any other novel of any point in the timeline. Yeah, so Dawn of the Jedi is obviously set at the start, but most people would not recommend reading it in chronological order. You're better either release order or pick an era. Pick an era that you like. When I started the EU, I started with. I just love any excuse to pull this book out. I started with Labyrinth of Evil, a prequel, an official prequel to Revenge of the Sith. The stuff with the brother was interesting. Oh, Tython, yeah. I was just learning a bit about Tython in the Old Republic game I was playing. This one has a lot of history about General Grievous, commissioned for that purpose. A lot of involvement from George Lucas on this one. It ends just before Revenge of the Sith happens, so loads of Genndy Tartakovsky Clone Wars stuff mentioned in there, and obviously the Clone Wars multimedia project. So that's cool. You're getting into it. Like that way, you'll get an appreciation for both, and you'll be able to see for yourself. It's good stuff. And when people complain about the continuity, it's really not true. Continuity was like the most important thing when it came to these. Day. May stood in a universe of rain, as though the jungle's trees and ferns and flowers had grown at the foot of a towering waterfall. Rain pounded through leaf and branch with a roar that made conversation possible only in shouts. No waterproof gear could handle this in less than a minute. Mace's clothes had soaked through. In less than a minute, Mace's clothes had soaked through. He dealt with the Karun style. He ignored it. His clothes would dry, and so would he. He was more concerned with his eyes. He had no he had to shelter them with both hands in order to look up against the rush. Visibility was only a handful of meters. It was just barely good enough that he could see the corpses. They hung upside down, elbows bent at a strange angle because their hands were still tied behind them. Living grip leaves twined around their ankles held them 6 meters above the jungle floor, low enough to bring their heads within an easy jump for a vine cat, like the one Ak had chased off. Ak had chased off as Mace and Nick approached. Mace counted 7 bodies. Birds and insects had been at them as well as the vine cats. They'd been hanging for a while. In damp gloom that alternated with thunderous downpours, and metals weren't the only thing that the local molds and fungi fed on. Oh, dudes, this is grim. Through the colourless tatters that were all that remained of their clothing, it was impossible to tell even if they had been men or women. Mace was only moderately certain they had been human. He stood beneath them, looking up into the empty eye sockets of the 2 that still had heads. Is this what you felt? Nick shouted down from the saddle. His grasser reached for the grip leaves that held the bodies, and Nick jabbed his forelimb with the bracevine goad. The grasser decided to rip up some nearby glass ferns instead. It never stopped chewing. Mace nodded. Echoes of these murders howled in the forest around him. He'd been able to feel it from hundreds of meters away. This place stank of the dark side. Well, now you've seen it. Nothing for us to do here. Come on, mount up. The corpses stared down at Mace without eyes, asking him, what will you do about us? Are they? Mace's voice was thick. He had to cough it clear, and enough water ran into his mouth that he passed a few seconds coughing for real. Are these Balawi? How should I know? Mace stepped out from below the bodies and squinted up at Nick. A blaze of lightning above the canopy haloed the young Karun's black hair and with gold. You mean they could have been Karunai? Sure, what's your point? He seemed puzzled that Mace would care one way or another. Mace wasn't sure why he cared either, or even if he cared. People are people, dead is dead. That's a weird that's what Mace thought. People are people, dead is dead. Oh, I guess Jedi try not to have, like, you know, those kind of connections to things. Dude, this is dark stuff. Even if these people had happened to be the enemy, nothing could make this right. We should bury them. We should get out of here. Right, so yeah. The Republic comics does Windu complete justice, I'd say. Cool. Dude, I can't wait to just dive into the comics and... Oh, it's going to be awesome. So much good stuff to read. What? Mount up, we're leaving. Let's see. Right, almost there, dudes. Mount up, we're leaving. If we can't bury them, at least we can cut them down, burn them, something. Mace caught at the mounting rope, as though with merely human strength might hold back the 2-ton grasser. Sure, burn 'em. Nick sputtered a mouthful of the drenching rain down the grasser's flank. There's that Jedi sense of humour again. We can't just leave them for the scavengers. Sure we can, and we will. Nick leaned down towards him, and on his face was something that might have even been pity for Mace. That is, for the dead, he seemed to feel nothing at all. If those are Karunai, Nick shouted, not unkindly, to give them any kind of decent burial will only light a giant "We were here" advertise screen for the next band of irregulars or militia patrol, and give them a pretty good idea of when. If those are Balawi... He glanced up at them. Everything human left his face. He lowered his voice, but Mace could read his lips. If they're Balawi, he muttered, this is already better than they deserve. We're really getting into that, like, Apocalypse Now vibe that Stover was talking about. Night. Mace woke from evil dreams without opening his eyes. He wasn't alone. He didn't need the Force to tell him this. He could smell him. Rank sweat, drool and raw thistle, Lesh, barely a murmur. Why here, Windu? You come here why? The wallet tent was pitch black. Lesh shouldn't even have known Mace was awake. What want here, you? Come to take her away from us, you. Said you would, she. His voice was blurry with the drug and with a childlike weepy puzzlement, as though he suspected Mace might break his favourite toy. Lesh, Mace pitched with his voice deep, calm, assured as a father. You have to leave my tent, Lesh. We can talk about this in the morning. Think you can, huh? Think you can? His voice thinned, a shout strangled to a whisper. How Mace smelled machine oil and Portak amber. He was armed. Don't understand yet, you, but find out you will. Mace reached into the force. You could feel him, crouched by Mace's ankle. Mace's bedroll was pinned beneath his boots, a less than ideal combat position. Lesh, Mace added the force to his voice. You want to leave now. We'll talk in the morning. What morning? Morning for you? Morning for me? Mace couldn't tell if he was saying morning or morning. Something was still strong enough, even in Lesh's thistle-addled mind, that he could resist Mace's force-pushed order. Don't know anything, you. His voice went thicker, hitching, as if he wasn't breathing well. But teach you, will Carr. What you do, he knows. Teach you, will the axe. Wait you, wait and see. Carr. There'd been a Carr Vaster mentioned in several of Depa's reports. His name had come up in a particularly capable leader of a commando squad, independent or semi-independent. Mace was unclear of the ULF's command structure, but Lesh breathed the name with a sort of superstitious awe. And had he said axe or axe? Lesh, you have to go now. Questions notwithstanding, Mace was not so foolish to engage a bark-drunk man in conversation. Think you know her, think she's yours, teach you better, maybe. Live long enough to learn, you, maybe not. That was enough of a threat for a flick of the force to bring his lightsaber to his hand. The sizzling flare of its blade, cast purple fringed shadows, but Lesh was not attacking. He hadn't moved. His rifle was tucked crosswise into his lap. Tears streamed down his face. That was a blur in his voice. That was the thick hitch. He was crying, silently. Lesh, Mace began in astonishment. What's the ma? He stopped himself because Lesh was still bark drunk. And Mace was still not a fool. Instead, he offered a hand towel from his kit bag. Here, wipe your face. Lesh took it and smeared the streaks below his eyes. He stared down at the towel and knotted it between his fists. Windu. No, Mace held out his hand for the towel. We'll talk in the morning, after you sober up. Lesh nodded and sniffled against the back of his fist. With one last beseeching look at Mace, he was gone. The night rolled on, slow and sleepless. Meditation offered less rest than sleep would, but no dreams. Not a bad bargain. In the morning, when he asked Lesh if he still wanted to talk, Lesh pretended he didn't know what Mace meant. Mace watched his back as he walked away, and a flash of force intuition took him and shook him, and he knew. By nightfall, Lesh would be dead. Wow. Right, folks, last little stretch here. Yeah, not much left to go. What are you thinking? I'll be back, fellas. If not, then I'll catch the first half in the replay. Cheers to Crepit. Have a good day at work if you're still there. And I definitely catch the first half. It was a good laugh. I'm still enjoying it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Cheers again, folks. I know it's been a long stretch, but it means we can go straight on to the next chapter next time. Right, let's do it. Day. The axe force yammer was almost painful. They'd given this call often enough that Mace knew it now. Gunships, more than one. Mace could feel that Nick was worried. In the force, dry ice tension rolled off him. It was starting to affect Mace too. Breathing it in off Nick tied knots in Mace's stomach. That's a weird structured sentence. Air patrols had been dogging them all day long. Spiral routes and quarter cutting, search pattern. It wasn't safe to assume that they were looking for anything but the four Karunai and Mace. Tension twisted those knots in Mace's guts. How could people live their lives under this kind of pressure? Bad luck, Nick muttered under his breath. Bad luck. They were exposed in a notch pass through a razorback ridge. Some long ago groundquake had knocked a gap here. A broad fan of scrub-clutched scree made the ramp they'd climbed up to the pass. They'd been picking their way through a jumble of boulders, a few dozen meters wide, axe ranging before and behind. The sides of the gap were towering cliffs, faces hung with flowering vines and epiphytic trees that clung to the rock with root-fingered grips. The spine of the ridge was shrouded in low clouds, only 200 or 300 meters away. The slope on the far side led down into dark jungle beyond. They might be able to reach the trees before the air patrol overflew them. But Nick reined in the grassers. Lesh is in trouble. Mace didn't have to ask how he knew. These young folk shared a bond almost as profound as the one they had with their axe. Mace thought of his force flash from this morning. He said, "Go." Nick wheeled the grasser and they galloped back through the notch. From Mace's rear-facing saddle, he watched Chalk overtaking them on her way back from her position on point. Her grasser was the fastest of the four, and it carried only half the load of Nick's. As they cleared the crest of the pass, Mace used the force to lift himself up so that he could stand on the saddle facing forward, his hands on Nick's back, leaning to see past his shoulder. On the descending curve of the pass, someone was down. An act dog nosed him nervously. Lesh. His grasser stood placidly a dozen meters away, ripping small trees from the cliff wall to fill its ever-chewing maw. Besh got there first. He swung down from the grasser and sprinted to his brother's side. "Get up," Nick shouted. "Mount up and move." Nick gestured, and in the force Mace felt a tug as tough as though an unseen hand had taken hold of his line of sight and dragged it out toward the jungle below. A pair of matte dull specks of metal skimmed the canopy, trailing a shock wake of rolling leaves. Gunships, coming straight for the notch. Might not have seen us yet, Nick muttered to himself. Might just be checking the pass. They've seen us. Nick looked down at Mace, past his shoulder. How do you know? Because they travel in threes. His last word was swallowed by howls of repulsor lifts and snarling turbojets that brought a gunship slewing into the gap from the other side of the ridge. Mace expected it to swoop in for a strafing run, but instead it hovered, cycling its turbojets. What are they doing? Nick scowled back at the gunship. You've heard the expression, "We're cooked." You've heard the expression, "We're cooked"? Yes. Ventral bays swung open in the gunship's belly, and nozzles shaped like a chemical rocket's reaction chamber deployed in a wide-angled array. They belched jets of flame that hit the ground and splashed and ran like rivers of fire, coating rocks of filling crevices. In just over a second, the whole end of the pass had become an inferno, so intense. Mace had to shield his face with his arm. The gunship swept toward them, burying the gap in fire. In this case, Nick said grimly, it's not just an expression. Alrighty, we have made it to chapter 5. Well done to everyone that made it to the end. That's our progress, folks. Really good chapter, I thought. Ooh. How are we all feeling in chat? You still enjoying the novel? Are you not enjoying the novel? Let me know. Let me know before I wrap it up and let you get on your merry ways. That felt quite long. That was only 10 pages. I don't know if it's because we were chatting or what. I struggled a little bit with that one. NGO Balance Point, the Wraith Squadron will be my next Star Wars reads. Nice. Wraith Squadron, is that the X-Wing books? Vex thinks it's good. Narrow Dark says he's going to need to check the novel out himself. I had Enemy of the Empire and Twin Engines on Destruction, good comics. Oh, we're still talking comics. Stieg only has 13 Star Wars novels left to read. That's an achievement, dude. That's awesome. It's the 5th, Wraith Squadron's the 5th X-Wing book. Cool. I remember when Star Wars Theory got asked if he'd read the X-Wing books, he was just like, not all of them. But in Stieg's case, it's true. Not all of them. I'm a bit gutted that we didn't manage to get Matt Wilkins on earlier. That would have been fun, but I think the stream would have went on for like another hour. I can imagine. Right, folks, I have taken up enough of your time. I'm really happy that you were all here to join me, and I hope you all had a good time. There's a delay, you see, there's a delay, so all the comments come up after for me. Aye, but Batusi, you're right. He was asked what the best Boba Fett comics were, and he said the Dark Horse ones. It's stuff like that. Like he'll just do like really basic answers to try and like get out of having to actually answer the question. And then, you could see he was like on Google like searching it, and he was like, oh, I prefer Jango Fett. What was the comic he said? What's that? Is it Open Season? Is the Jango Fett one? And he's like reading about it on there. Cheers, Vex. Stieg says Theory couldn't pronounce Shizor correctly either. And that was after I corrected him, and he just doubled down, so. Pause thinks he was reading Wookiee. Pause, is it no past your bedtime? I don't know what time it is over there, to be honest with you. Great stream, Scran had it all today. Oh, cheers, Luke. It'll be early for you as well. Looking at his second monitor. Open Season is the Jango Fett backstory comics. Yeah, that's the one he was talking about. 8:38, pause. Is that PM? So that is past your bedtime. About almost 40 minutes past your bedtime. Oh, cheers by Batusi. It's mainly just to cover the stream's the main goal is to cover the novel, but like throughout the week I'll try and take notes of things that I noticed within like the community and stuff. And like it usually ends up just having a rant about something silly Star Wars Theories said, because like I know you're personally a fan of the like some of the newer stuff, but he's someone that the novel is Shill Point, yeah. No, it's Mr. Glass. He's someone that claims to be like a George Lucas purist, but he'll say things like the EU George wasn't involved with the EU, whereas he was. Just and like he says he's let me start that again. He says that he's a George Lucas purist channel, but like all he does is cover like Disney stuff, you know? And whether you like Disney or not, like, he's claiming one thing but doing another, and his followers are insane. Like, ugh. No offense to anyone that watches Star Wars Theory. Like, if you take offense at that, then that's on you. I'd think. I used to like, I used to follow his channel. I unsubbed the day that he watched Ahsoka. It was episode 4, where you see Anakin in the World Between Worlds, and it finished, and he said, perhaps the only point of reunification in fandom is joining forces against that guy. Like, nothing personal against him. It's just, he said, basically he said that if you don't like Ahsoka episode 4, I seriously question your loyalty or allegiance, I think he said, to George Lucas. He's like, what more do you want? Just stuff like that. Dude acts like an authority on Star Wars. He doesn't even know the history of the franchise. Like, easy stuff you should know. And yeah, he threatened Purist as well, when Purist called him out. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't want the channel just to be like bashing bigger channels. Like, fair enough, call it out and stuff, but it tends to just make people think that you're jealous and you're trying to like bring them down to like prop yourself up, and that's not what I want to put out there, to be honest. Steeg says, you go to, oh, you actually, Batusi goes to Darth Paus's channel for that, aye? Nice. That's what I'd recommend. Steeg says, George Lucas wanted Ahsoka to die during Order 66, so the Ahsoka show, it's against what Lucas wanted. People act like I make all my videos about Theory. I've made like 5. That is true, to be honest. A lot, when I found Paus's channel, it's a lot of videos about Clone Wars and how it damages continuity. 5 out of 320 something. Well, Pause, you're just a jealous grifter. That's why you're doing it. They're all really well done, and the clips are funny. Yeah, and that's the thing about to say, the clips that Pause is using, they're not out of context either. It's things that the dude said. Pause is just jealous of the big channel. The big corporate Disney Star Wars channel. How long's this been going on for? 162 minutes. I use all clips in context, but people can't handle the truth. So it would seem. Aye. Steeg only steals old commercials and Star Wars audio dramas and puts on his channel. Never done a live stream. Yeah, but Steeg appears on loads of live streams. He's like a celebrity. Steeg was on a lot of the streams I like what I used to like watching. Yeah, some of them I do watch, but sadly he doesn't appear on those anymore. He'll sometimes be on. I'll plug it. Is it Jade Shadow? Is that the name of the channel? I'm subscribed to her. Steeg sometimes goes on her channel and talks with her, and that's really good. She does read throughs as well. I think she's been doing The Hobbit. I think she's actually on to The Fellowship now. So, and that's one of Steeg's areas of expertise. Tolkien kind of stuff. I'm sure he's a big Teddy Brooks fan as well. We were talking about him earlier. But I'm glad you guys think the stream's kind of got like a relaxing vibe. Guess that's the idea. I got blacklisted when I said and proved that the Lucasfilm Civil War was BS. Yeah. That's like Doomcock territory and Echo Base Network, right? The Civil War. I think people just really want like, if you're not into the books and stuff, like all you have is like the stuff that's on screen. WW Pro, yeah, he pushed that. I've got this theory that WW Pro and Doomcock are the same dude. They've got like the same voice. Midnight's Edge did it as well. Cheers Vex. Yeah, it's good to talk about like Star Wars that you do, like Stephanie Genexic, whatever her name is. Right, Doomcock. They're like the pure hope grifters. They're the ones that'll pretend like it's getting better when like it's just not going to happen. A disappointment is a pause. Pause, like for a young guy, Pause has a lot of knowledge, in Star Wars EU and like all the community kind of stuff. So to have Pause punching down and bullying me all the time can only be a good thing. Pause is the poster boy. No, it's Star Wars theory, man. All right, Stieg. That's funny. But people seem to like that stuff. That's what I mean. They're selling that like the hopium. George Lucas is coming back. George Lucas is not coming back. The dude sold it because he's almost 80 years old. Pause says, I better finish KOTOR this January. Well, Pause, I'll no be saying it again. No, I'm kidding. It should arrive on Thursday, so I'm told. Like I said, the wife doesn't want to be married to a fake fan shill. And I told her that Darth Pause keeps punching down on me. So she bought me the one for... It's her Switch. Like, I'm not a gamer. It's her Switch. You get Force Unleashed, Pod Racer... it's only the first Force Unleashed. Pod Racer, or Pod Racing, whatever it's called. The Jedi Knight games. One of them's Outcast, one of them's Academy. Pause, you always have to get there before me. Aye, there's like 7 games. KOTOR 1, KOTOR 2. And did I say Republic Commando? Dave Filoni's favourite game. He played it to completion. And then stole all the troopers for his show. Oh, but when Dave Filoni put the Commandos in Star Wars, that's when they became George Lucas Star Wars. After I replay KOTOR and KOTOR 2, I will probably be doing weekly SWTOR streams. Oh, nice one, Pause. That'd be good. Steeg says, Jedi Outcast and Academy completely nails the EU. Perfectly executed in every way. Nice. Don't even get me started on Dave ruining Republic Commandos. Batusi likes Star Wars board games. Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebellion. There's Steve Kenobi's the dude you want to talk to, Batusi, for Star Wars board games and just games in general for Star Wars. He's shared a lot of that stuff with me. Obviously, if you're getting into the EU, a lot of the early EU used like source books for the early board games. And George Lucas actually liked that stuff. He actually pushed for them to use that. You guys are funny. I like reading your comments. Steeg says, Karen Travis quit due to Filoni destroying the lore she had written and wrecked her books. Where were the feminists? Yeah, because she was basically asked, from what I understand, to like retcon a bunch of the stuff in her own like series. So she was like, nah. Like she created a lot of that lore. Mandalorian lore as well, I'm pretty sure. So for Filoni to come in and just take what he wants and do what he wanted with it, and then expect other... Dude, it's so infuriating. And that's another thing, Batusi, that you'll come to learn. That even if you like Clone Wars, um, everyone that worked in the EU worked in tandem. Like, they shared ideas. It was cohesive. And then as soon as Filoni comes in, he doesn't want to play nice with everyone else. He treats all their stuff like it's a candy store. And he's still doing it. He's taking stuff, other people's ideas, and changing them, and then he'll act like he's the one that's giving this to you. Yeah, the chip. No, the chip stuff. That's not Lucas. That's from Katie Lucas. Because George. Season 6 came out after the sale, but there's actually I'll find it. There's a quote out there from George that I think it might even be in the archive books about the clones. In every other media, even in the movies, it's pushed that the clones were bred. They were trained to be. I'm losing the word. They were going to betray the Jedi. Like either way, and even in the movie when Order 66 comes, you hear Sidious. He calls Commander Cody specifically. He says, "Commander Cody, execute Order 66." It's not just a memo that goes out to everyone. He's calling all the commanders, and then they're giving the signal to everyone else, and they're like, "Cool." But they'd already kind of become kind of wary of the Jedi by that point, especially throughout the EU. And I always go back to Labyrinth of Evil, but there's a line in that where it says the clones were trained by their Mandalorian template, Jango Fett. They would not hesitate to obey an order, basically. So they're just trained for it. But obviously the Clone Wars tried to humanize them a bit. Aye, Labyrinth of Evil top 5 EU for sure. Not gonna lie, I thought it was more shocking the moment as just plain betrayal. I think the chip's just a bad idea. Revenge of the Sith directly references Labyrinth of Evil. Lucas did that deliberately. Yeah, because that's how it worked. It's all part of the saga. Matthew says every single one of Dave's interviews and the way he interprets EU is so different than how those writers actually wrote those books. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't respect what came before. He does it with the writers, and he also does it with George, and they'll treat him like he's George's apprentice. If that's the case, why did he give Star Wars to Kathleen Kennedy? You know, if he was training up someone to take over, he would have given it to Dave. Oh really, Stieg? That's cool. And when George was teaching the people that were working on the Clone Wars, it wasn't like a one-on-one thing. It was a whole room. It was a big writer's room, a big table. You've seen the clips because they use the same 3 clips every time they talk about it. George would go in for, when he started the Clone Wars, he basically gave them like a TED talk. Pardon me. Oh, am I spreading falsehoods? Pause. George didn't care about it. Just because you don't like it, pause. Just because you hate the EU doesn't mean I have to. So George basically showed them, like, how to make Star Wars. Oh, Batusi's gonna. Yeah. So he basically trained them, informed them, gave them directives. Same thing he did with the EU, and then, he was going to back off. He was going to get them started and then back off. And then he saw what they were doing with the animation. He was like, "That's really cool. I want to get involved in this." Oh, Vex, change your tune and bounce, dude. Thanks for being here for so long. You're awesome. I'll catch you later, man. And then he got involved throughout the first season, and they took some of the episodes and made the movie out of it. You'll know, like, if you watch TCW in chronological order, the movie comes like third or fourth in watch order. He was like, "Oh, this animation's really good. You can make a movie out of it." Scran should pull up on Theory at MegaCon. Theory said pull up. You'll no be expecting a Scotsman there. Right. Anakin Scottwalker, that's me. But so much information going through my head right now. Did you know Lucas was working with someone to adapt a Star Wars story to screen right after the buyout for Disney? Looks like it might have been Shadows of the Empire. Is that a joke, Stieg? I don't know. Basically, he showed them how to make Star Wars, and then he stepped away, and then he came back, and he was like, "That's cool," and then he came in at the beginning of the seasons for like a writers' roundtable, and not a joke, really. Where did you hear that, Stieg? That he was working on adapting? Because I've read quotes that say George thought about making Heir to the Empire into a movie, but I don't know where that source comes from. And then George would basically do what he did with the rest of the EU. He'd give ideas, and then Filoni and the rest of them didn't even have to use his ideas. No evidence it was Shadows of the Empire, but it was adapting a story that was already written. Ah, I've got you. They were going to be doing Young Jedi Knights. They were supposed to be doing a show about that back in the 90s. I think Purist has talked about that. Yeah, sure, Stieg. That'd be awesome if you found that. No, Underworld was being written at the same time as TCW. Yeah, he wrote about 50 episodes, but it was going to be too dear to make it, so. And people forget when TCW was coming out, George was making his own movies. He was making Red Tails. He was making Indiana Jones 4. And it was an animated one he did as well. Or that might have been slightly later. Yeah, Underworld would have been awesome. Because you would have had Underworld and also the 1313 game. Pause likes Indiana Jones 4. When I was Strange Magic, was that what it was called, Matthew? It flopped, aye. That's a shame for George. But George has even said that like he's made all the movies he wants to make, so yeah, don't count on him coming back and making Star Wars. And even if he did, it's too far gone. Unless you scrap everything that came out after the sale, unless you scrap it all, there's no coming back, because it all ties into the sequels. Really, Matthew? Wow. I've been thinking about watching Red Tails for the channel, like talking about it. That's right, but to say it was going to have something to do with Oh, Keely agrees. That's because you're a true fan, Keely. Yeah, it was going to involve Palpatine. That's where Disney Lucasfilm claimed that need to decanonize everything Disney plus TCW. Yeah, And the thing with getting rid of TCW is that some of the EU already attempted to like recover from some of those contradictions, but there's probably a way to do it. You probably retcon a handful of things and get back to work on the rest of it. I need to get the Ewok movies and the Droid one on DVD. I already have the micro series. Yeah, micro series is awesome, and it ties into EU. You think you could redeem the Emperor, Batuse? I don't know. I think he's like the embodiment of evil, and it ties into like the hero's journey, like, you know, that timeless tale kind of thing. Like at the end of the story, like the prince Andor, like not Andor, Luke, defeats like the dragon at the end. You know, and you return home stronger than and wiser than you did when you left. So if you redeem the Emperor, you've really got to be careful with that stuff, because you start to undo things that are important to the story. Anyways, dudes, I've talked a long time. I'm probably going to get in trouble for going past 1 a.m. So 3 hour stream, you're just a fake fan that is grifting and jealous. Hey, it takes 3 hours to talk crap on bigger channels. It takes a long time. But cheers for being here, guys. I can't believe you stuck around this long. But yeah, I don't want to get in trouble. It's after 1 a.m. and I've got work tomorrow. So cheers again, and it'll be fun. We'll do this next Monday, hopefully. And cheers, Pause. That means a lot coming for you, because your streams are legendary. They're a lot of fun. I just watch your content to find things to talk about for mine, so it's all good. Right, folks, have a good night. I'm going to bed instead of... Nothing's ever good enough for Pause. Nothing's ever good enough. Oh, Matthew, were you talking about Abeloth and the Mortis arc? And they tried to retcon some of that stuff, or add it. Right, dudes, I could talk to you for another 3 hours. These are awesome. But I'll get going. And Purist is going to be streaming soon anyway. I don't want to eat into his time. So cheers again, and as always, long live the expanded universe, and lang may your lums reek. Cool. Catch you later, dudes.